Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the slight delay. Before we start prayers and the meeting, could I ask all present to please treat everyone in this chamber with respect, including my chaplain, Reverend Dean Hurston, where prayers are said. Can I ask my chaplain to say prayers?
O God, as we prepare ourselves for an act of silent remembrance for the late Queen Elizabeth II, together with the former council leader and serving councillor, the late Jean Stretton, and former councillor David Joines, let us consider our own mortality. O God, help us to make the most of our time here on earth, to be instruments of peace and kindness. Let us use the examples of Elizabeth, our sovereign, and Jean, our colleague, and David, to inspire and deepen our own devotion to serving the people of Oldham. We give thanks for two amazing women and a real gent, their contribution to public life and to the positive difference that they have made to others in their lifetimes. Amen.
Thank you, Jean. If members wish to remove their jackets, they may do so. And please sit down. May I remind members and members of the public that the meeting will be streamed on a live webcast from the Council's website. The Council has committed to conduct its full Council business in an environment that is welcoming, secure and safe for members, employees and visitors. It is important that meetings are conducted in a safe and fair manner. All persons present at the meeting should be treated with courtesy and respect. This includes members of the public, elected members, employees and visitors. Behaviours, language or actions that impact public safety, cause disruption and/or adjournment to the course of business at the meetings are not acceptable. Members of the public are therefore asked to note that public meetings protocol is also available on the Council's website, and elected members are reminded to note the elected members protocol under the Members' Code of Conduct, which was signed upon taking office, which provides details of expected principles of behaviour. The meeting protocol is available on the Council website. And just before we go on to the agenda items, and I think all of you here present would like to wish Liz Drogon a very happy birthday, and apologies for the delay. So we now move on to the agenda items. Item 1 is apologies. I've received apologies for absence from Councillors Birch, H. Gloucester, Iqbal and Shuttleworth. Item 2. This is the first meeting since the Queen died. She actually died after the day after our last full council meeting. So we've actually got this opportunity for members to pay respects to the late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. That's the second item on your agenda. And I've got Councillors Chadderton, Jabbar, Lancaster, Arnott, Hobin, Sykes and Hamlet to speak for the Queen. Thank you.
I'll go first, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As this is the first time we've met in this forum since the passing of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, it's right that the Council pays tribute to her long life and her dedication to public service. The late Queen was a role model to many of us, seeking to serve our communities and make those places better. Since her elevation to the throne, right up until her passing, Queen Elizabeth II did her duty with grace and professionalism. In my time here as leader since May, Madam Mayor, I've overseen both the Platinum Jubilee and the late Queen's death, often in conjunction with yourself. And I felt during that time a huge sense of privilege to have witnessed both events with so many of our wonderful residents. And I've met so many different people in our borough. The Queen had impacted in so many different ways, and I'm sure you felt the same, Madam Mayor. And we had the honour of visiting some of our care homes back in September with the condolence book for those residents who weren't able to get out. And it was incredible to hear people's memories and stories of the Queen. And we met 88-year-old George, who served as a guardsman 70 years ago for Queen Elizabeth II, and to recall those memories and what it meant to those people was absolutely incredible. And I do think, obviously, having a royal family and a Queen that has ruled over us so long is a uniquely British thing. I think a lot of people in other countries don't have that sense that we did, and I don't think you can underestimate the impact her passing had on the public psyche and what that means for us going forward. You know, it might be minor things like the post boxes or the stamps or our banknotes, but for many of us in this country, she's the monarch, she's the only monarch we have ever known, and a huge event in our country. Queen Elizabeth II, right from becoming Queen, as I said till the day she died, was a titan of public service. A dedication to the British people and to the wider Commonwealth was unparalleled. And as our longest reigning monarch, her legacy and impact will remain long after certainly we've all long gone, and it's likely we'll never see the like of her again. For many of us, it's felt that Queen Elizabeth not only reigned over us, but also lived alongside us with the impact that she had on us as a country. And her profound impact on the people of Oldham will never be forgotten. What a woman she was, and may she rest in peace. God save the King.
Thank you, Councillor Chatterton. Councillor Javar.
Thank you, Madam, for giving me this opportunity to pay tribute to Her late Majesty the Queen. I, like millions across the world, was saddened to hear her death. Queen Elizabeth II was one of the greatest and the best known leaders that we have known. Her passing was felt across the borough, and I was particularly proud of how in the days that followed, Oldhamers came together to pay their respect. I had the honour and privilege of meeting Her Majesty on 2 occasions. I would like to take a couple of minutes of your time, Madam Mayor, to share my memories with you, because I feel this shows what a remarkable and caring human being she was. The first time, in 1992, when she came to the garden party at Alexandra Park, as a young man, I was introduced to her, and we started chatting about how I came to Oldham as a young boy from Bangladesh. Sadly, at the time, the country had badly been affected by flooding, and many people had lost their lives. Her Majesty immediately brought up the situation and asked if I still had relatives in Bangladesh and inquired if they were safe. She also was interested about fundraising that we were doing locally to help the survivors. To this day, I feel privileged at how Her Majesty took the time to speak to me and show a genuine interest in the concern in the well-being of the others. 25 years later, Madam Mayor, she bestowed my MBE on me at Buckingham Palace, one of the proudest moments of my life and something that I will always treasure. I, like everyone else who met her, will remember for those moments for the rest of my life. Her legacy endures through the many people she met over the years and many lives she touched. She was loved and admired by people across the world, and this is because she could engage with people of all walks of life. Her devotion to duty is an example to us all, and I know I speak for many residents when I say she will be sorely missed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On behalf of my ward constituents, my Conservative colleagues and the communities our group represents, I would like to offer our sincere continued condolences to His Majesty the King, Queen Camilla and the royal family on the passing of Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. Much has been said of our dearly departed Sovereign Lady, and it is impossible to convey in a brief couple of minutes all that she meant to those who reside in our borough. However, I did want to reflect on just a few of her many great virtues and the inspirational examples she provided in her lifetime. We gathered in this chamber enjoyed contributing to local government life, and in Her late Majesty we can look towards the greatest public servant Britain has ever been blessed with. She attended countless engagements across her 70-year reign, and indeed beforehand as the young and dutiful princess. Many have remarked already that these commitments were not a mere formality for her, but rather a privilege she proudly practised, always showing genuine interest in those who had the immense pleasure of meeting her. We can all learn from her great sense of duty and her humility in public service. In reading the adoring tributes made by her children and grandchildren, we also know that Her Majesty was, at heart, a loving mother, grandmother, and indeed great-grandmother. In many ways, monarchy is a burden for the monarch themselves, and yet Queen Elizabeth II somehow managed to devote herself fully to her own family, while still affording her people the reassurance we required from her. Though our grieving wanes, it is important that we especially remember those who were nearest and dearest to her, who will no doubt continue to feel her loss keenly. Finally, we can also draw inspiration from her life in faith. Her late Majesty's deep and devout belief in Jesus Christ is widely known to have provided her with constancy, giving her the strength to serve us all. Being the sons and daughters of the second Elizabethan age is a source of great pride, and we can also now look forward to this new Carolean era in loyal support of His Majesty. May Her late Majesty rest in peace. God save the King.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm grateful for the opportunity to pay this short tribute to Her late Majesty and commend the councillors who have spoken before me for their contributions. I believe that I may be the only current councillor who has served in the armed forces, and in that capacity I would like to speak to Council on the relationship that our late Queen enjoyed with all branches of the military during her 70-year reign. The Queen's relationship with the armed forces began when, as Princess Elizabeth, she joined the ATS in 1945, becoming the first female member of the royal family to join the armed forces as a full-time active member. During the following 77 years, Her Majesty's close ties to our military were never far from her thoughts. As sovereign, the Queen was head of the armed forces and was also the wife, mother and grandmother of individuals having served in the forces. Her Majesty was acutely aware of the role of service families, and in 2009 she introduced the Elizabeth Cross, the first medal to which the Queen put her name. This was instituted to give special recognition to the families of those who had died on military operations or as a result of terrorism since 1948. The Queen held over 50 ranks and appointments in the UK and Commonwealth Armed Services, and much of her working life was taken up with visits to military bases and ships in the UK and overseas, meeting serving members of the armed forces and their families. At this time of year, we would also remember that as a national figurehead, Her Majesty led remembrance events throughout her reign, attending the Royal British Legion's Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall and the Cenotaph service on Whitehall. Her Majesty's respect, admiration and affection for her armed forces, their families and the numerous charities and organisations that she supported was obvious and was an ever-present thread that ran through her entire reign. It was reciprocated in every way by those who served and their families. It was a unique relationship that we may never see again. God save the King.
Thank you. Councillor Holbin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I stand representing the Fells of Independence in this brief session, remembering the Queen. Most of us in this chamber will only have known and lived through the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, the longest serving monarch of this great nation of ours. Throughout this, she was a constant presence, providing stability and reassurance to us all. She dedicated her life to serving the people with a steadfast sense of duty. As a nation, we should, and most of us are, very grateful to have such an inspiring head of state. We thank her for her duty and for serving us so well. May she rest in peace eternally. God bless the Queen, and God save the King.
Thank you. Councillor Sykes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the comments members have made, and on behalf of my colleagues and residents we represent, and everybody, I think it's only appropriate to say a few words. For a remarkable 70 years, Queen Elizabeth II had been at the forefront of British life as our monarch and our head of state. For many of us, and I think nearly all of us in this chamber, she's the only head of state we've ever known. So it's understandable that the outpouring of grief and affection that followed her passing has, at times, been very moving, inspiring and even surprising. She was the longest serving monarch in our country's history, an achievement that I think will never be exceeded. Here at home, she has shown the highest example of duty, what it means, and what it takes to be a true public servant. And abroad, she has represented the very best of British values and ideals to the world. Who can not remember that picture of her sat alone at her husband's funeral, socially distanced due to COVID, and how that contrasted to others in leadership roles and how they behaved. Her work as leader of the Commonwealth is exceptional, drawing together a very, very diverse group of nations. And if you ever wanted a measure of its power and success, it is the fact that several countries who have never ever been part of our empire or had any association with the British Isles have now joined it. The Queen has embodied modern Britain from the ruins of war through periods of hardship and poverty and into the modern digital age. The Queen has been a constant and steadying presence, reminding us of our shared history and our unique national identity. Her Christmas Day broadcasts are legendary and part of millions of people's Christmas Day rituals and tradition around the world. I had the pleasure of meeting Her Majesty in person when she presented me with my OBE a few years ago at Buckingham Palace. She put me at ease, was professional, was very, very well briefed, and those few precious moments and our exchange is something I shall treasure and never forget. We should also be mindful that as well as being Queen, she was also a mother, a grandmother and a great-grandmother. I'm sure all colleagues will join me in expressing our deepest sympathies and condolences to them. Madam Mayor, in the weeks since we've lost the Queen, we have seen King Charles take on state duties during what must have been an unimaginable difficult time for him personally. On behalf of the Liberal Democrat group, I want to offer the King our support and best wishes as he takes Elizabethan Britain into a new era. Long live the King.
Thank you. Councillor Hamlet?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Her late Majesty truly touched us all, as we've heard this evening, and as our longest and, dare I say, one of our greatest monarchs ever to govern over us. I saw Her late Majesty only twice in my life. Once as she drove past at speed, I grant. When I was quite young, I only saw the front and back of the car, but I knew it was her because the crest at the front sort of gave it away, and all the police cars also gave it away a little bit. But the other one was relatively recently. She came to reopen up the new cooperative headquarters, and after I say my goodbyes to my current partner, I waited outside with some curiosity, and then Her Majesty, along with His late Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh, emerged to much fanfare and clapping. And I thought, what should I do? Should I take a photo? Should I clap? Should I wish them good health? And of course, in true fashion, I did all of that and more, and I cheered, and I was so happy to actually see them in person, because of course normally when you see them on TV you don't think that they're as real, but they were, and truly they were something absolutely special, and that's what she was. And of course everyone says Her late Majesty was special, but they are, and they really do give us such joy and such grace. She of course, after seeing 70 years of great change and bringing our nations to where it is today, perhaps maybe now we give her the epitaph of Elizabeth the Great, alongside our only two other monarchs, after giving such a title of such a realm of change, she really did see our nation and our other overseas territories and commonwealths change so greatly that perhaps maybe she should be given such an epitaph, as we truly loved her. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and God save the King.
Thank you, everyone, for your really lovely tributes. You should be proud of yourselves. We move on to item 3 on the agenda. Is Council agreed that the Council minutes from the meeting held on the 7th of September 22 be agreed as a correct record, subject to an amendment on page 30, the third amendment? Councillor Alan Deany moved and Councillor H. Gloucester seconded the following motion. Motion should read amendment. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 4, declarations of interest. Has anybody got any declarations of interest?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Item number 9, pecuniary interest.
Okay. Anybody else? Yep.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, anything police related, especially item 12, opposition business, motion 1. At that point, I'll leave the room. And it'd be nice if...
there's no need. I've checked it. It's fine. It's fine. You don't have to declare an interest on that one.
Okay, I'll still leave the room. Thank you.
To explain it to the...
Yeah.
It's only where the matter arises which directly relates to the pecuniary interest. If it directly relates to the pecuniary interest, you need to declare it and leave the room as a pecuniary interest. If not, then you don't.
Councillor Wilkinson?
In receipt of police pension, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Anybody else? Move forward. Thank you. Item 5, urgent business. There's no items of urgent business. Item 6, communications. Members will be aware of the recent passing of Jean Stretton. This is an opportunity for members to say a few words about Jean, following which will be followed a minute's silence for Jean. And I've had Councillors Chatterton, Williams, Sheldon, Holbin and Sykes. Councillor Chatterton to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know many of us in the chamber were deeply shocked by the passing of our friend, comrade and colleague, Jean Stretton, an untimely passing. Jean served Hollingwood and Oldham spectacularly. She was Oldham through and through. As the first female leader of Oldham Council, she was a trailblazer. She was a dedicated public servant who was absolutely rooted in her community. Jean loved representing Hollingwood, and every decision she made as a councillor, a cabinet member and a leader reflected how much she cared about the people of Oldham. I miss Jean. Oldham will miss Jean, and the borough will miss Jean, because throughout her 19 years as a councillor, Jean was everything you wanted in a local councillor, and everything I wanted in a cabinet member. She was loyal, she was smart, and she was good at what she did. And for a personal reflection, as you rise to be leader, Elaine, would you like to say something? No.
No?
Oh, sorry. I thought you cut me off.
Harry's messing with them.
In a personal level, you know, you rise to be leader, but it's a unique position to lead a town or a city. You know, we have 241,000 residents, and only so many will ever become leader, won't there? And certainly, you go through your ups and downs and there's peaks and troughs. But the support that Jean gave to me since May was absolutely incredible. But prior to that, when I came onto the council 10 years ago and I became cabinet member and I became deputy leader before becoming leader, that was the path that Jean followed. And you know, her advice, her support, her guidance was absolutely second to none. And she was practical and she was pragmatic and she always had your back. And on an extremely personal level, I will miss that immensely. But this was also true for a lot of people in our borough. And since she's passed away, you know, the people that have contacted me, the people I've spoken to in Hollingwood, and other people around, it tells me the impact Jean had across whole of Oldham and not just in Oldham. Across Oldham and not just in Hollingwood, and I'll miss her most as a friend. Jean often spoke really fondly and often about her husband John, her stepchildren and I know her grandchildren. gave us such joy in the past few years, and she loved them all deeply, and my thoughts remain with them as they continue to deal with this really difficult time. Oldham has lost a great servant in Jean, and we will not forget a remarkable service to Oldham. Rest in peace, Jean.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to speak regarding this. Madam Mayor, I've been on the council in total 16 years, but everybody, for 15 of those years, Jean's been right there, and it's an extraordinary feeling. I never ever thought I would have been doing this in this council chamber today now. It's an extraordinary feeling. It happened so suddenly, weren't expecting it, and wow, when I got the phone call, I phoned officers up, phoned the leader up, as I had to phone up, but it didn't sink in until a long time later. But you know, everybody, Jean had a special grace. She had a grace that says, if you give me a challenge politically, I will meet that challenge with pride, and she did that brilliantly. And Jean, everybody, operated within two watchwords: tough and competent. Tough, because she wasn't afraid to get stuck in and get the job done, and competent, because she was always willing to make herself accountable to the public that she served. In my book, Madam Mayor, that goes down as political expertise combined with good old-fashioned guts. And Jean was a leader. And to everybody else that might not be a leader, there's an element there, Madam Mayor, of graft being a leader. Now, the other people have been deputies. I'm a deputy cabinet member, not a cabinet member. But no matter what position you are, no matter what party you're from, everybody, it doesn't matter. When you're the leader and you're the gaffer, there's an immense workload. But what did Jean do, Madam Mayor? She made it look easy. Out of all the other members that I've served under, where they've been leaders, they have their own different style of doing it, but Jean made it look so easy to do. She stand up over there, and she just, nothing ever seemed to rattle. And there was one occasion when I said to her, when she became leader, Jean, if you're struggling, just ring me up. Like I've said to lots of members, ring me up. Never once did she matter, never once. And she walk out of this council chamber, you're thinking, what is it? And she always used to say, Madam Mayor, Steve, I know I'm not a dynamic leader, but I just want to do my bit. And she did made it look so easy. There was one occasion, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind me showing this to everybody, back in 2004, we'd done some electioneering in your ward, and we came out of the pub with all had a drink, and she tapped me, she goes, Steve, I want to be a cabinet member. I looked at her and I goes, okay. So can you do it? She goes, do you think I can? I said, if you do it, you're probably going to get it. And at that time, Madam Mayor, the structure was different. The leader, it was a group members that picked the cabinet members, but the leader gave the portfolio. So the portfolio she got was going to be the HR element. No. She cut for the housing one, and it was demanding as hell. The year after, she had another one, and another one. So there's only two other cabinet members that can boast that length of service. That's Abdul Jabbar and Shoaib Akhtar, that have been in the cabinet that length of time. An extraordinary position that she's been in. Any councillors, let me just share this with everybody. Madam Mayor, I'm not a religious person, but I just need to touch the power of your imagination of all of you. I can just imagine Jean now, Madam Mayor, sitting there, reading a book like she used to do, having a glass of wine and chilling out, and looking down and thinking, wow, looking down from God's front porch and thinking, wow, what a troubled world that is. But dear Jean, you're no longer with us. So for all of us down here that have got the memories, dear Jean, your spirit and your dreams are still alive in our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is with great sadness I offer some words on behalf of the Conservative group in tribute to the late Councillor Jean Stretton. Jean, as we all know, was a hard-working councillor who took on many roles as councillor and was the council leader only a short time ago. It is 5 years, but it doesn't seem very long ago at all. Her work was evident, especially in her own ward, and my fellow councillors have given me examples of how she helped them in the past. Jean not only worked for her ward, but cared for the whole borough. Her devotion and determination in her role as a councillor to get a result and get things done was always evident. Jean will be greatly missed by her family, friends, and the people of Oldham, and we thank her for all the work she did for the people of this borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Holbin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I speak on behalf of the Fells of Independence again, and while we didn't know much of Jean, being on the opposite side of this room doesn't prevent us from respecting each other as councillors and each other as human beings. Standing as a councillor, as we all know, is a privilege, and Jean served her constituents for many years in that role, to be supported in the area that you live, and for your neighbours to have such trust in you for so long says so much about the person. I'm sure that many will miss her. From all of us on this side, may she rest in peace. God bless Jean.
Thank you. Councillor Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm obviously rising to pay a small tribute to Jean. I've known Jean since she was first elected for Hollingwood in 2003, and I've worked with her closely, as close as you ever could with a yellow and a red, in a number of different roles, not least when she was leader of the council between 2016 and 2018. She was a woman of her word, and we had mutual respect for our respective roles, both of which changed over the years. And in particular, I remember us doing some joint training as elected members for staff and new staff on several occasions. She was Oldham's first female leader and a great advocate for so many causes during her time on the council, and that includes her work with the Oldham Food Bank and the Credit Union. With things the way they are now, Madam Mayor, we all know the value of those organisations and the value of the support that Jean gave them. Jean will be sorely missed by all those who work with her, and my thoughts and prayers go with her husband John, her 2 stepchildren, her 5 grandchildren and her great-granddaughter at this very difficult time. God bless Jean. I'm sure she will already be sorting them out and getting stuck in another place. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to inform full council that former councillor David Joins passed away recently. Members wish to say a few words followed by it's going to be Councillor Sykes again and Councillor Ahmed for David Joins.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. I don't really like third time this about somebody that's no longer with us, but I couldn't let this pass about David. And if I was going to be like David, I suppose I should be really loud and bellowing at you all now, because you need to listen. Because that's how he spoke nearly all the time. David served his community in Hollingwood as a reverend, as an educator, as a youth group leader, and as a councillor for a period spanning more than half a century. In 1964, under David, the Belutha Baptist Church became one of the first churches to get a youth centre. And between 65, I'd only been running around in my nappies then, and 93, David was head of religious education at Counthill School. He was a passionate believer in education, and that education was the key or the gateway to unlock opportunities for our young people. He was first elected a councillor in 1974, and he served until 2002. Despite retiring as a minister in 2009, at the age of 77, David carried on as a preacher in his new home, Carlton, in the Yorkshire Dales, well into his 80s. David's been a pillar of the community, Mr. Hollingwood, with an infectious personality that made a difference to so many people over such an incredibly long period of public service. As a councillor of Hollingwood, both David and his wife Elaine were tenacious campaigners. They battled on behalf of their constituents and their community and were held in high esteem because of it. He was a valued member of the Liberal Democrat group, and I can recall many forthright discussions and debates with him. He was, as you might expect, a great orator at full council meetings. Madam Mayor, we can all reflect on David's outstanding contribution to our borough and find inspiration in what he achieved and the legacy he's left behind in Hollingwood. My thoughts and the thoughts of Liberal Democrat colleagues go with David's family, his wife Elaine, his 3 daughters, Alison, Rosemary and Christine, and his 9 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. The world certainly does need more people like David just now. God bless David and rest in peace.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I think it's a sad day today that we're paying tribute to two councillors, and they're both from Hollandwood. Firstly, I'd like to echo everything which has been said about Jean, who was a great friend, colleague, and sport. David was also from Hollandwood, and yeah, I remember that, Howard. I wouldn't call it firebrand, but he was a preacher, and if you were a front bench in the Labour, no, we were at the receiving end. And I remember quite a few times receiving bullets. Now, he would stand up and we would say, hope he's not coming for me this time. But he was passionate. I mean, he loved Hollandwood. And anything to do with Hollandwood, he will campaign fiercely. And they'll do double act. Elaine was Hollandwood councillor as well. And I still remember the speeches they made about the Chapel Road playing fields.
I don't remember that.
Because they wanted to preserve it. I mean, it's a great facility, but they wanted to preserve it for things like Donkey Derby and others. And debate went on and on and on. Eventually, it came to a head, and we developed the playing fields. And it's a nice facility. But David and Elaine, they were passionate about people of Hollandwood and the lack of playing facilities for the children and the things. But he was a fantastic councillor though, and because he was a preacher, many a times he said prayers at the councils, and his prayers were always spot on. I remember he used to bring a card of prayers, like the stump cards, the kids have football cards. He used to have a card, and he'll pull out a prayer and say it, and it was so appropriate. I remember because I used to take the cards off him afterwards. I said, no, I like the prayer so much, can I keep the card? And I still got them. Yeah, he was a wonderful councillor, not from our point of view, because he used to fire bullets with the left, right, and centre. And yes, both Elaine and David, they were great colleagues. So I wish Elaine, she got my sympathy. Sorry, somebody's ringing. I hope, David, rest in peace. God bless you, and good wishes for Elaine. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, could I ask you to rise, and we'll have a minute's silence for the Queen, Jean and David. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Sorry, folks, this chair's heavier than me. Thank you for that. Councillor Barnes, I've been informed that you wish to address the chamber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to make a statement. Further to my comments and conduct at the council meetings on the 27th of June and the 13th of July 2022, I accept that my conduct was unacceptable. I failed to treat you, Madam Mayor, with respect by repeatedly refusing to cease talking when you requested me to do so, and also refused to sit down when requested to do so. I failed to treat Gerard Jones with respect in comments made about him. I also failed to treat members with respect by referring to despicable selfishness when describing them. I apologise to you, Madam Mayor, Gerard Jones, and all the members in this chamber for this conduct and comments made. I can also confirm that I've removed the video footage from my Facebook page. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for the apology, Councillor Barnes. We move on to item 7, petitions, and there's no petitions for council to note. Item 8 is the annual statement, Leader's annual statement, and I call on the Leader to make her annual statement. Thank you, Councillor Chatterton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, as I said when I first became Leader in May, it was the honour of my life to lead the council in this great town. That sentiment remains truer today than it did then. I'm hugely proud of the achievements our borough has made since I became Leader. Tonight I want to use my annual statement to highlight the work that this council does to try and make Oldham a better place for our residents. And I want to start with our Creating a Better Place programme. For years, our residents have been telling us that they want a rejuvenated Oldham Town Centre. And that is exactly what we are doing. Our residents are now beginning to see this with the changes to Spindles, where some of the retail units have transformed into offices for council staff. It can also be seen at the ongoing work at Parliament Square and St George's Square, and in the improvements of part of accessible Oldham. But the regeneration of our town is not just about what is shiny and what is new. It is also about celebrating what is great about Oldham, such as Tommyfield Market, and preserving our heritage. We know how hard market traders have been hit by the pandemic and the cost of living crisis. We have huge plans for a new indoor market, but we want to ensure that our traders are in the best possible place to move when the time comes. So I've agreed a 50% rent reduction for our traders at the market. I know how much the market means to people in Oldham, and it is imperative that we support them and that it thrives. We're also committed to protecting Oldham's heritage. We're in the process of taking back the Prudential building, and work is underway to restore the old library. Once the council leaves the civic centre, the old library will become a new civic heart of Oldham. It will be home to the council chamber and the mayoral office. There will also be extended space for Gallery Oldham, rooms for community use, and a brand new space for an incredibly successful Oldham Theatre workshop. We are committed to ensuring that our heritage buildings have a viable long-term public use. In Northern Routes, Oldham Council is delivering the UK's largest urban country park and eco-farm. Plans have been approved for a new visitor and learning centre, a bike hub, and every effort is being made to ensure sustainability runs right through this project. Of course, though, it's not just about Oldham Town Centre. Work is underway at Broadway Green, which is close to completing a logistical hub, which will create 450 jobs. In Royton, work is underway to restore the Town Hall. And in Failsworth, the council have worked with grassroots Oldham Women Enterprise to transform a derelict site into a community garden and growing hub. These are all examples where our residents can see that work is being done to transform all of Oldham. When I became Leader, another of my key priorities I set out was children and young people. As the parent of a small child growing up in Oldham, I reflect constantly about what I want for her as she grows up. I want her to have a good start in life. I want her to be able to access outstanding early years provision and excellent schools. But I also want her to be able to play in some of our incredible parks, and I want her to be proud to live here and to grow up here, knowing that the environment we created has allowed her to become the best version of herself. When the time comes, I want us to have high-quality jobs that she can access and a transport system that allows her to go where she wants, when she wants. And if she decides to stay in Oldham, then I want her to be able to access high-quality, affordable housing. These are aspirations I have, not just for my child, but for every single child in this town. But we have to be honest that too many of our children will face abuse, neglect, and they will have complex needs and vulnerabilities. And for those children, this council has to work even harder to allow them to have the childhood and then an adulthood that they deserve. In Oldham, we have around 60,000 children and young people, which is slightly more than the capacity of the Etihad Stadium. We have over 3,000 children known to Oldham Social Care, and in the context of the Etihad, that is the whole of the away end. We currently have over 600 referrals into social care every single month, and our social workers work day and night to improve the lives of these young people. Around 1/3 of this council's budget is spent on children's social care, with the bulk of that being spent on children's social care. But I don't think that registers with most people. But why would it? Because it's a relatively small number of people that actually see where that budget goes. The council works hard across the board to protect our children and young people. And recently, Ofsted have rated Rivendell Children's Home as good, and this builds on Ofsted's focus visit last November, where they praised our clear focus on keeping children safe and improving the quality of social work practice in Oldham. As an administration, we recognise the challenge ahead of us, and we will do whatever it takes to support our children and young people to thrive. And that's why next month I'll be outlining our plans for further investment in children and young people in Oldham. The third priority I outlined when I became leader was our resident first approach. I know that for too many people, their experience of dealing with the council is not good enough. People struggle to get access to the right team or the information that they need, which leads to unnecessary delays and understandable frustration. Anyone that tries to find information on our website will know how exasperating that is, but I'm committed to making this simpler, easier and more accessible. Over the coming months, I'll be outlining plans to improve the website, make contact the council easier and speedier, and ensuring residents get a timely response. Madam Mayor, it would be remiss of me to present an annual report without referencing the cost of living crisis. The current cost of living crisis is one of the biggest challenges Oldhamers have ever had to face. With inflation at record levels and the knock-on effects that brings with it, Oldhamers are struggling today, and I know that many of us are worried that this is going to get worse. I could not stand by and take no action. To respond to this crisis, I have launched one of the biggest cost of living support package that any council in the country has come up with, because we know that if we don't act now, it will cost our residents and it will cost the council more down the line. Prevention is always better than cure. Our messages to Oldhamers is a simple one, and one I hope to embed across all council services in the future. We can help. What good, though, is our ambitious regeneration work if Oldhamers can't reap the benefit? So to keep Oldhamers afloat, our £3 million We Can Help package provides support for our engagement team. It doubles our Warm Homes Oldham programme, it increases the capacity of our helpline and gives money to our voluntary and community groups, including Oldham Food Bank and Action Together. It will also bring specialist citizens advice sessions to every district in Oldham every single week, and we've already turned all our libraries into warm banks. These are just some of the things we're doing to tackle the current crisis. Since we launched our We Can Help campaign, I've been out to the food bank and spent some time with our teams on the front line, and this has included teams with our helpline. And now this was 3 weeks ago, and I told this story to our group quite recently. I spent some time listening to calls to our crisis helpline, and one woman rang up, obviously an Oldham resident. Now, she lives with her husband and her 4 children. She has a baby and then 3 other older children, but all school-aged children. And she rang up for a referral into the food bank, which is the most common phone call that we get into our helpline. So the call handler said, that's fine, I can refer you in that. They'll contact you within the next 24 hours, and you can get that delivered within the same amount of time as well. And the call handler said, is there anything else you need with your food bank referral? And the lady said, well, like, what do you mean? He said, well, do you need any essential items? She said, like, shower gel or shampoo? And she said, oh, well, yeah, I haven't got either of those, so if you could send that, that's okay. And she said, and I've got a baby, and I've got some nappies left, but not many, but I've run out of wipes. So do you think you could send some of those? So she said, we'll put that in, and if the food bank has got them, they'll send that to you. So then the call handler said, is there anything else I can help with? She said, are you accessing your right housing benefit? And the lady said, yeah, housing benefit I think is fine. And he said, what about your council tax? Do you need support with your council tax? And the woman said, well, now you mention the council tax, I've had a letter recently, and I've got £2,000 debt to the council because I've not been able to afford my council tax, and I don't know what to do about that. And the lady said, that's fine, I can refer you on to another team who specialises in financial advice, and we can deal with your council tax issue. And she said, is there anything else that I can help you with? And the woman said, well, actually, now you ask, do you know anywhere that does furniture that I can get for free? And the call handler said, well, we don't do it, the council and the food bank. She said, but you could try some local charities. She said, is there something in particular that you want? And this lady said, well, 3 of my children don't have a bed. And that's just one woman who lived in Oldham that I happened to be listening to because I spent some time with our frontline team. And, you know, for people in Oldham to be living like that is an absolute stain on this country in 2022. And I've not been able to stop thinking about that woman since that happened 3 weeks ago. Do you know, it keeps me awake at night that I just happened to listen to that. But how many people across Oldham are living like that at the moment? But how many people across Oldham are going to find themselves in that situation over the next 6 months? And it's really imperative, and we want our residents to know that we can help. And to me, I heard that, and I was so proud of the card handler, but that is the difference we have made, and making decisions, a Labour-run authority, that is a tangible difference we are making to people's lives in Oldham at the moment. Which I suppose brings me on to my final point, Madam Mayor, that I want to make, and that is about how the chaos of national politics affects the decisions that we make here in Oldham. Local government does not exist within a vacuum. Every single council in this country is beholden to the government of the day. Now, sometimes I wish everything was as simple as our critics suggested, and that the council could just do whatever it wanted and spend whatever it wanted. Now, we're going as far as we can do, but we can only do so much. And we need the government to step in with national policy changes that will stop our most vulnerable going hungry, cold and struggling through spiralling costs this winter. Poverty is about political choices made by those who can afford not to worry about it. Oldhamers need help because of 12 years of Tory austerity has left Oldham with low wages, high prices and a cost of living crisis. We've had 3 Prime Ministers this year and none of them have got a grip on this crisis. 2 of them have made it tangibly worse, and I'm sceptical that the third can do any better. For the past 12 years, Oldham Council has had to endure cuts while demands for our service are skyrocketed. Since 2010 and the Tory Lib Dem coalition took over, this council has lost 45% of our revenue budget. And every year that the money central government gives to local authorities in the local government finance settlement is based on us increasing our council tax by the maximum amount allowed. None of us want to do this. We all recognise that council tax is a hugely regressive tax. We are all residents of this borough, and I would personally like a lower council tax as well. Now, last year, all 10 Greater Manchester authorities raised council tax. We are not alone. There is not a council in this country that does not raise council tax. In terms of Greater Manchester, 4 of them raised their council tax higher than we did, and the other 4 raised it at the same level. Now, we understand that residents are rightly annoyed that they're paying more into council tax than they were 10 years ago, but they're receiving less services than they were 10 years ago. But enough's enough. Because what were the previous 12 years of austerity for if our public finances are now in a worse state than when they were then? All we've seen in recent years is chaos at the hands of the Conservative Party, and this isn't normal. We lurch from Prime Minister to Chancellor, and it seems like in the not too distant future, every single one of us will get a go at being Education Secretary for a day. As we've seen this week, the Home Secretary stand up and use grossly inappropriate language to talk about our immigration crisis of their own making. And she uses that language as a diversionary tactic because however she frames it, the reality is the Conservative Party have failed to tackle immigration. Thousands of people are turning up on the shores of Dover and Kent every single day, and people know that after 12 years, this is nobody's fault but the Conservative government. People aren't stupid. And people can see that the public services are on their knees. They know how difficult it is to get a GP's appointment. They know that people are waiting for hours in corridors, in hospitals and in the back of ambulances. And we've had tragic cases in Greater Manchester recently, including a patient who actually died in the back of an ambulance. People can see their children's schools are in need of investment, and they know that people who've worked hard all their lives are having to sell their homes to pay for the care that they deserve as they get older. Nearly every part of the public sector is in crisis. And for what? So my message here is a simple one. Austerity did not work 12 years ago and it won't work today. We cannot have austerity 2.0. Oldham cannot afford to return to austerity, and it is that simple. We deserve better than this. Oldham deserves better than this, and most importantly, our residents deserve better than this. I recently wrote to the Chancellor of the Exchequer and asked him not to take this out on us. And I encourage everyone in this chamber to join us in our Don't Take This Out on Us campaign so that we can continue to provide vital public services for our residents. Oldhamers don't ask for a lot, we just want our fair share, and rightly so. But Madam Mayor, despite potentially impeding cuts from central government and the chaos that is the current Conservative Party, I know that Oldham's future is bright. I said at the beginning that it remains truer today than it did in May, that leading this town is the greatest honour of my life. And that's because it's a privilege to come into work every single day. I see our staff dedicated, improving our town and the lives of the people that live here. I spend a lot of time meeting our residents and our community groups who go out of their way for their community and their neighbours, and it's those people that are the heart of this town. We've demonstrated that we can make a tangible difference to people's lives with our £3 million We Can Help campaign, and our ambitious regeneration plans are beginning to come to fruition. This Labour-run authority, in the context of losing almost half of our budget, can be proud of everything we have achieved and all the things we will achieve together. Oldham's future will always be brighter under Labour. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Chadderton. If we can move on to item 9, Youth Council. I've had notification that the Youth Council want to alter the motion as circulated. Councillor Munro, is this moved?
Move, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hamlet, is this seconded?
Second, Madam Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Does Council agree that the altered motion... Does Council agree the altered motion is circulated? I call on the Youth Council to present their motion. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Olivia Everett and I am an Oldham Youth Council representative from Oldham North.
And my name is Hamza Iqbal and I am an Oldham Youth Council representative for Oldham East.
Over Easter and the summer holidays, some of our youth councillors were lucky enough to be a part of holiday activities and food sessions run by different providers in Oldham. This programme, a national government initiative, is targeted at young people who receive free school meals. Is designed to provide a warm meal and fun enriching activities during the Christmas, Easter and summer school holidays. Research has shown that the school holidays can be pressure points for some families. For some children this can lead to a holiday experience gap, with children from low-income households being less likely to access organised out-of-school activities, more likely to experience unhealthy holidays in terms of nutrition and physical health, more likely to experience social isolation. The HAF programme is the government's response to this issue, with evidence showing that free holiday clubs can have a positive impact on young children and young people. Our youth councillors were lucky, as the youth service sessions have offered both places for those on free school meals funded by HAF and places for those who were funded by the youth service. This, however, is not the case for other sessions in Oldham, as many providers just don't have the funding or resources to offer places to other non-eligible young people. We would like this to change and make the HAF programme accessible to all young people, not for just those on free school meals. HAF sessions are for the 13,000 young people in Oldham who access free school meals every term. However, we believe that the cost of living crisis is a national problem for all households in the UK. In August 2022, the rate of inflation hit records of 14.8%, meaning everyone was needing to pay more for the necessities. Obviously, the crisis is impacting those who claim free school meals, but many others, earning less than the national median of £31,000, will begin to struggle with the rise of cost of energy, fuel and food. Indeed, research carried out by Loughborough University for the End Child Poverty Coalition showed 39.3% of children in Oldham were living below the poverty line in 2020 to 2021, after housing costs were considered. This figure would show that many more than those identified as eligible for free school meals require help during holiday times. In the school holidays, many families are struggling to afford childcare, activities and food, and are facing a decision of choosing one or the other. Unfortunately, as many of these children do not qualify for free school meals, they cannot access the HAF programme. We feel this isn't fair, as their struggle is just as valid, and families shouldn't have the excess stress of choosing food or activities. In the press, we are also seeing celebrities such as Marcus Rashford and Jamie Oliver calling for free school meals to be extended to more young people. They are supporting campaigns and would like to see an increase in the numbers of young people eligible for free school meals by a further 800,000 who are the most vulnerable in society. This increase is to support all young people living in households that claim universal credit, not just those whose household income is less than £7,400.
In Oldham, the number of young people taking up the offer of the HAF program is approximately 20% of those young people eligible of receiving free school meals. In researching why, we have found that one major barrier to accessing these sessions is the stigma. If sessions are only accessed by those on free school meals, it identifies those young people as some of the poorest families in the town, something that people do not want to be labeled with. It also stops people being with their friends during their holiday times. If you have a choice to go to a sports session alone just so you get a warm meal, or to the park to play football with your mates, talking with your people would suggest you would not choose going alone. In opening up the program to all young people, it would mean that the most vulnerable young people would get the meals they need, while also being able to enjoy their holidays with their friends. Holiday sessions also help with young people's mental health, with everyone having to cut back, with worries about jobs, the cost of living crisis, and COVID recovery. More than ever, all young people need support with their mental health. The HAF sessions tick all boxes for their 5 ways to well-being. Sessions allowed young people to connect with others, allow them to be physically active, allow them to learn new skills, to participate in social and community life, and to help them to take notice, savoring their moment. In addition to this, access to HAF sessions also provided young people with access to trusted adults to support them with issues in their lives that they may not want to discuss with family or friends. In allowing all young people to access their HAF sessions, we feel the value for money not only comes in feeding those who need it, but also tackles the low-level mental health issues, as well as providing young people with access to informal learning opportunities that help them develop skills for life. In summary, we applaud the HAF program's aims and its ambition to support children and young people who need it most. We feel that given the current crisis around cost of living, the program doesn't go far enough. Opening the holiday activities and food program to all young people will reach more vulnerable families, people who need support but perhaps not quite eligible. It will be an effective and quick way for the government to support more families with the cost of living crisis. It will remove the stigma, increasing uptake of those young people eligible for free school meals, provide help to other families impacted by financial challenges, while allowing them to enjoy their holidays with their friends. Finally, it will also allow young people to gain support with their mental health at a time when it is needed most. We propose that Oldham Council resolve to ask the Chief Executive to write to the Prime Minister, the Secretary of State for Education, the Shadow Secretary for State for Education, and to Oldham's Members of Parliament, Jim McMahon MP, Debbie Abrahams MP, and Angela Rayner MP, to ask them to lobby Parliament to extend the offer of their holiday activities and food program to all young people, not just those on free school meals, to support all those impacted by current cost of living crisis.
Well done. Does any member wish to speak? I've got Councillor Hamlet.
Leanne proposes, doesn't she? Is that right? Yeah, so Leanne's first, and then Councillor Hamlet second.
Does Council agree the recommendation? Sorry, and Councillor Hamlet to second, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the Youth Council for presenting this important motion, and I just want to commend Olivia and Hamza for speaking with such passion and humanity on this issue. It's not easy, and really you've done a fabulous job, so well done. Since its inception, Oldham Council's HAF programme has become a lifeline for many families who would otherwise struggle to feed and entertain their children in the holidays. And there are currently 13,000 children on free school meals in Oldham who are eligible to attend a HAF event. And over the Easter holidays, nearly 3,000 of those children attended an event, and that rose to 4,000 children over the summer. But as we plan our Christmas HAF programme, it's clear that during this difficult winter, when some families may have to choose between heating their house and eating, the HAF programme will provide a crucial safety net to many children who would otherwise go to bed hungry. But the Youth Council is correct in asserting that the cost of living crisis is impacting many households. Households where parents are in work, households that earn decent wages, but households that nevertheless are still struggling to reconcile those earnings with an exponential rise in energy, food, fuel and childcare bills. And unfortunately, these families are not eligible for free school meals and are therefore ineligible to join a HAF event without paying a fee. It is deplorable that any child should experience food insecurity, but it is particularly inexplicable that families in work, earning good wages, holding down jobs, should struggle to feed their children during school holidays. Yet this is the reality of England in 2022. What does that say about us as a society? 800,000 children do not meet the free school meal eligibility criteria, despite their household income being so low that they're classed as living in poverty. The problem with linking HAF eligibility to free school meals is that the earnings threshold for children to qualify for free school meals is extremely low. It's less than £7,400 per year. And this threshold has remained static since 2018, despite food and drink inflation increasing over 14% in the last year alone. England's free school meal eligibility threshold is the most restrictive of all the devolved nations. Scotland and Wales are now introducing free school meals for all children at primary level, while Northern Ireland's eligibility threshold is twice that of England's at £14,000 a year. If the HAF programme in England was a universal offer, hundreds and thousands of children living in food insecurity could access a healthy hot meal throughout the holidays. As the Youth Council has argued, there are two clear additional benefits to making the HAF offer universal. The first is that it will reduce stigma, with no visible distinction between children on free school meals and those who are not at the point of delivery. And indeed, the Food Foundation's report on the HAF scheme indicates that this is likely to greatly increase uptake. And the second benefit of a universal HAF offer is that through alleviating food insecurity across the child population as a whole, we can tackle worsening health and education outcomes. Hunger, combined with a lack of access to enriching educational activities during the holidays, has a detrimental impact on young people's mental health and well-being. And there is a proven ironclad link between food insecurity, poor public health and poor educational and economic outcomes. So I think a universal HAF offer will go some way towards easing these issues. For Oldham Council, alleviating child poverty and food insecurity is the golden thread that runs through this administration. Last month we approved £2 million for holiday food vouchers for families with children on free school meals, and we'll be announcing our exciting Winter HAF programme shortly. But we would be able to reach more children in Oldham if the government extended the HAF to a universal offer, and that's why we urge you to support the Youth Council motion. Thank you.
Councillor Hamlet to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much to our Youth Council representatives, Olivia and Hamza. I also note the minor change to address it to just the Prime Minister and Minister of the Day, whichever day that may be. Mr Rashford was right to embarrass the government into a U-turn, another one, feeding our children and kids. We are the sixth richest nation in the world. I said it last time, and yet we're still struggling to feed and heat our youngest. Madam Mayor, I did attend a half session over summer, and yes, they're great. And more can be done, as our Youth Council have said, with families and young children able to attend and get something healthy to eat and spend some time having some activities to do for the day. But it shouldn't be a box-ticking exercise. When they're cooking the food, perhaps they could also show the prep and talk about where the best place to buy the ingredients from, such as the low-cost places, and how to create activities and games at home that doesn't come at a cost. But also, when colder months set in, why not hold them in our much-needed community buildings, libraries, or lifelong learning centres over the weekend and holidays, so people can get some warmth and still develop their skills, particularly over the half period. It's just a suggestion, but it's a practical one, because I think it's important that people still get that, especially over the colder months and the darker months ahead, to provide those rays of warmth and light. This is a good piece of work, and I'm glad to see that Youth Council are coming up with much needed suggestions, and please do keep them coming. So thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Now is the time that I should be asking if any member wishes to speak. Councillor Williams.
Cheers, Madam Mayor, thank you. Madam Mayor, if you don't mind just talking to the Youth Council, just as a comment, it's not necessarily about the motion. Everybody that's in this council chamber, there's lots of new faces from all parties, so just think of this. About 5 years ago, Madam Mayor, I remember talking to the Youth Council, and to you guys, you need to really listen to this. Madam Mayor, what does Youth Council do that's good? How many times have they been in this council chamber and rocked the boat and made us think, whoa, hang on, we better behave here, we better listen to this, because these guys, Madam Mayor, you know, do not let go. There's times, colleagues, in this council chamber, some of the new members, where you're thinking, they don't mean it. There's one allegation being made by one councillor, it's been wrote by an officer. It must be joking. And the amount of times, Madam Mayor, that they've come in and made us sit up and think, it's been countless. And there's one, Madam Mayor, one occasion I can remember more than any, and there's loads, but let me just share this with everybody. On Overview Scrutiny, led by Uncle Colin here, there was myself on it, as well as Diane Williamson and Peter Dean. And one of the motions came to Overview Scrutiny, and it was about illegalised, the use of illegalised and legalising the borough. We got asked, we was asking the Oldham Scrutiny Committee, could an officer go out and just see what the usage is in Oldham? Astonishingly, it was totally different than what we thought it was. But what had happened, everybody? What had happened? These guys had made it happen, that. So to you two guys from the Youth Council, don't stop, keep going, just hold your nerve, and eventually as you become more mature and you start to gain popularity and everybody gets to know you, eventually you guys will become a group of people without limits. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Moores.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support the motion, and it's great to hear the young people speaking. I was lucky enough to sit down with them before and have a chat with them. And they're just an example of what we've got in Oldham. And our young people could be so much more if they had the right support. And extending the path is one way of doing that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is any other member wish to speak? Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say well done to the two of you. It's fantastic what you just said. It's not easy to speak in this council chamber. You, young man, you spoke about mental health, and a lot of the time, young people's mental health is overlooked. I mean, I'm of a certain age where mental health wasn't taken seriously, and now it is, and it's important with the effects of education and lockdown that that's taken into consideration. And I would echo what Councillor Munro has said, that the cost of food, the cost of petrol. I'll give an example. The cost of sunflower oil has gone up by 65%. So the headline figure of 10.1% is not exactly accurate. And I echo what Councillor Moore said, what Councillor Hamblett said. You two are a credit to this town. Well done for what you've done. And I will certainly be supporting this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Munro to sum up. you want to sum up? No? Okay. Are the recommendations agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Well done. Move on to item 10, question time. This part of the agenda is question time, where Council will consider all questions submitted in the order received, starting with public questions. There is a 30-minute time limit for public questions, and once this time limit expires, no further questions will be asked. There is no right to reply to answers given, and I will be reading out the questions. If the time limit has expired and a member of the public has submitted a question which has been ruled in for consideration, the question and responses will be published on the Council's website. The first question has been submitted by Geoffrey Smith. These old council street litter bins, I've asked council coordinators, councillors etc. to get one from my community to help reduce litter, as it is on a spot where fly tipping and litter is rife. So I was wondering if I could acquire one for my area, Royton Hall Walk, Royton, as the area would benefit from a litter bin. Most are going to be scrapped anyway. I also run Oldham Womble's community litter picking group, so please consider me for a single bin. If I ever acquired one, it will be kept clean and not overflowing, so no complaints. I call on Councillor Chatterton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank Mr Smith for his question as well? I understand that Mr Smith has been in direct discussion with his officers. Mr Smith is actually also one of my residents in Ryan South, so I speak to Mr Smith quite regularly. I understand that he has already spoken to officers in relation to this, and officers have confirmed that they are unable to provide a council-branded bin directly to Mr Smith, as there's liability involved for which he would not be covered. I'm aware, though, that the location for the bin is owned by the Guinness Housing Association, and we're quite keen for us to work in partnership with them to support the work that Mr Smith is doing in the area. I'd also like to take the opportunity to personally thank Mr Smith for all the work he does in Royton and beyond to assist us in keeping our streets and our open spaces clear of litter. And I hope more of the community can follow Mr Smith's leads and get involved in Don't Trash Oldham. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Hannah Roberts. The former Dog and Partridge pub on Middleton Road in Royton has been under development for some time. I know that the developer has had to reapply for planning permission to change the scheme because of the building was in such poor structural state, which caused some delay. I also know that the council has previously taken action to ensure that the site is cleaned up and the building is made secure. I can see, though, that the site again is covered in rubbish and the building is no longer sealed up. Work also seems to have stopped. Can the council take any action to make the owner keep the site clear and to ensure that it is secured against trespassers? And does the council have any information about the timetable for the building work? I call on Councillor Chatterton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank Hannah Roberts for her question as well. I'm aware that we've written to the landowner of the site advising them to secure the site and recommend that they resume construction to resolve the challenges while also maintaining the site. If no positive actions are taken by the landowner, then the council will investigate whether enforcement action could be appropriate under section 215 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. The council does not have a current position from the landowner on the timescales for the building work. However, we will continue to chase for updates. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Mick Harwood. Can I have an update on the work on Royton Town Hall and Library? Is there space for the local community to use? And is work on schedule? And has the opening date been confirmed? I call on Councillor Chatterton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank Mr Harwood for his question as well? The Royton Town Hall and Library buildings are planned to undergo major alterations and refurbishment work to ensure these buildings of local heritage importance are retained and improved. The project includes various improvements for the benefit of the local community, including a refurbished library and bringing the Town Hall meeting room back into use for the community, voluntary and faith sectors. We've already completed some of the work on the Town Hall building, including the demolition of the rear extension and the necessary repairs to the clock tower, clock faces and mechanisms. We're currently within the procurement phase of a contractor for further works and will be able to advise on completion of all the works in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Shazia Akhtar. It's good to see the Get Oldham Working Jobs Fair is being held again this September. Please can we have an update at the end of council meeting of how many employers, job seekers and students attended? It would also be good to know how many people found a job and apprenticeships or new careers as a result. I call on Councillor Akhtar to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, can I thank Shazia for the question? By the way, she's no relation to mine, which seem to have the same surname. I can confirm that attendance comprised of 61 employers and 1,043 members of the public. The opportunities available at the event included 678 jobs, 152 apprenticeships and 120 work experience and volunteering positions. Officers are currently tracking the outcomes of the job fair with employees, but at this time we know that 60 attendees have found employment and there are many interviews scheduled for the coming weeks now half term has passed. One of the case studies, I've got an example of a case study. The feedback from the NHS professional is that we spoke to over 100 candidates on the day and have applications from over 60 prospective candidates for our bank and flexible positions across care, estates and facilities, domestics and clerical to work within our client Northern Care Allowance. A great success story from the day was meeting Catherine, an experienced catering assistant. Catherine sent us her CV whilst chatting with our consultant Alex. Alex sent her CV immediately to the catering manager at Royal Oldham Hospital and an interview was confirmed within an hour. After a second interview today, Monday, that's a couple of days ago, Catherine has now been offered a full-time position within the department to start on Monday, 3rd of October. Sorry, this was written a few weeks ago. This officer's Catherine flexibility and a long-term contract has provided NHS a fantastic member of staff within a very short staff team. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Andrew Holt. Given the looming energy crisis and the broader issue of climate change, what plans do the Council have for sustainability across the borough? I call on Councillor Jabbar to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks to Mr. Holt for his question. The Oldham Green New Deal strategy was adopted in March 2020 and is available on the Council website. This plan sets out the Council's approach to energy for the borough, which aims to secure large inward investment in low-carbon infrastructure for the borough to cut carbon emission and stabilise energy bills. A key initiative to achieve this is our ongoing work to develop an Oldham Green New Deal development partnership, building on Greater Manchester level initiatives such as GM Local Energy Market Project. We also aim to make sure that Oldham's local green technology and services supply chain companies are involved in such possible in delivering low carbon infrastructure in the borough, bringing new opportunities and jobs and training opportunities in this growing sector. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Larry Patrick. I'm really pleased that Oldham's Labour Council has worked with the CCG to find a way to build a long-awaited new health centre in Shaw, which will deliver modern health services for local residents and improve part of the Shaw Centre. Does the Council know what the timetable is for delivering the new health centre and when will it open to patients? I call on Councillor Boundridge to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're delighted that the residents of Shaw and Crompton are finally on track to have access to a modern and fit-for-purpose local health care facility. So, I'll take the credit.
Sounds like you have, to be honest.
Subject to planning approval and the completion of site purchase, preparatory work will begin early in January, with contractors going on site the following month. So the handover of the building is scheduled for March 2024, and it will open to new patients as soon as possible after that. The Council continues to work closely with the NHS to support and facilitate this much needed project, which is currently on plan and with no delays envisaged. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Don Stewart. It has been well publicised in the press that a vote by the Conservative MPs has allowed vast quantities of raw sewage to be pumped into Britain's rivers and onto Britain's beaches. Has the Council itself incurred any costs of clean-up, and if so, will it be seeking to reclaim these costs from the profiteering privatised water companies? I call on Councillor Chadderton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank Ms Stewart for her question regarding the sewage contamination of the country's rivers and beaches, and I'm sure, you know, she was as horrified as everybody else to see raw sewage being put across our beaches and our rivers, and for the government to think that that's acceptable is absolutely appalling. I can confirm that Oldham Council has not incurred any costs relating to the actions required within the borough. The Environment Agency will take action and ensure compliance for any matters relating to contamination of rivers and seas. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
The next question has been submitted by Syed Maruf Ali. What is the NEAT figures for Oldham? And just for clarification for those that don't know, not in education, employment or training. Which was at the highest and lowest number of NEETs? What help and support are available to help young people get into education, employment or training? How many young people from Wornath ward between 16 to 25 are NEET? Can you please break this down by age, gender and ethnicity? I call on Councillor Ali to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to Syed Maruf Ali for his question. The current NEET rate, so that is the young people who are not in education, employment or training for Oldham, for the month of September 2022 is 2.12%. This covers year 12 and year 13 as per our statutory duty to report to the DFE. The most recent comparator data available by ward is June 2022. At that point, Hollingwood had the highest number of young people who were NEET, and Saddleworth West and Leeds had the lowest. The Council commissions a trusted and skilled partner, Positive Steps, to work up with our young people to provide support, advice and career guidance during their participation age, which is year 12 and 13. We have a variety of education, training and personal development options from a wide range of agencies that young people can access. Information is available on the online platform padlet.com. Just to mention very briefly some of the few initiatives we have. Northern Route continues to empower young people and connects them with growth opportunities in the green sector. We've got Get Oldham Working Youth, another initiative that continues to develop, initially supporting care leavers to get into education, employment and training via the youth hub model. This administration has committed to 20 apprenticeships per year across council services to support young people to achieve qualifications, work experience and establish careers. Events have been targeted at school leavers over the summer with education, training and engagement providers to support them with understanding the range of options available to them. As mentioned, the most recent comparator data available by ward is June 2022. The Oldham NEET rate was then 3.9%, so 16 to 18-year-olds. Of the 3.9%, 21 young people who were NEET resided in the Wornath ward. This equates to 4.2% of the June NEET population. Of the 9.1% Oldham youth unemployment, which is 18 to 24-year-olds, 12% resided in the Wornath ward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Shoulder Travel Futures. We are a group of residents who are concerned about safe, more direct pedestrianisation and cycle access around Bulcote Lane, particularly for pupils of Royton and Crompton School. Will the Council put forward a scheme which separates walkers and cyclists from cars in the next round of the Mayor's Challenge Fund bidding? I call on Councillor Chatterton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank Sholva Travel Futures for the question. We're currently using the Greater Manchester Mayor's Challenge Capability funding to identify gaps in our walking and cycling network, to inform a delivery pipeline to improve access for walking, cycling and wheeling in Oldham. We've applied for additional funding to review our active travel and road safety requirements around our schools. The outcomes of these studies, plus requests like those of Sholva Travel Futures, will be used to prioritise locations and develop schemes that were put forward in the next round of funding bids. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Norma Taylor. The tourist cost of living crisis is having a terrible effect on many Oldham households and businesses. It's not just the cost of petrol, gas and electricity, but also food and many other goods. Inflation must be affecting our council's budget too. Could the Cabinet Member for Finance explain what is happening and how the council is dealing with it? I call on Councillor Jabbar to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks to Norma for her question. We know how things are getting really tough for many households right now, and sadly, Madam Mayor, it looks as though things could get even harder, especially as the cost of many household items continue to increase. To help those who need it most, we have invested more than £3 million to provide funding for energy, food, childcare, as well as extending the range of existing support available, such as Citizens Advice Service and Community Engagement Team, who will go door to door, knocking on people's welfare and helping them to access support they need at this moment in time. We are opening warm banks in every district, open to anyone who needs a warm, inviting space through the colder months. We are working with local partners to identify local spaces that can provide warm space free of charge for residents. These include our libraries and community centres. We're also providing an additional £1.9 million of food vouchers to households in receipt of free school meals during October, Christmas, February and Easter holidays, easing the financial burden that many parents are facing. When it comes to the council budget, it is clear we are facing a very challenging period. We have faced over a decade austerity, responding to a pandemic, and now doing everything we can to help during this cost of living crisis. However, we are responding to this challenge proactively, delivering a wide range of transformational plans to improve our residents' experience of council services, reducing demand and long-term efficiencies. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Peter Grubb. In the view of increasing fuel costs and the need to improve health by encouraging exercise, could the Leader of the Council indicate what plans are in place to provide safe and continuous cycle routes and secure cycle storage at schools, shopping areas, council workplace and public transport interchanges? I call on Councillor Chatterton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank Pete Grubb for his question? We're currently finalising our new transport strategy, which sets out actions to increase access to key destinations across the borough and promote active travel. This will significantly help contribute to improving the health of our residents and communities. To date, we have successfully bid for funding via Transport for Greater Manchester to connect the gaps in our walking and cycling routes. We're also working with developers to contribute to highways improvements. As we develop our local plan, we are also including parking guidance to ensure all developments and transport interchanges include safe and secure cycle parking for residents, business use and visitors. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Sheridwan Short. I understand the reason the council could not go ahead with the Wrigley Head solar farm was because of the income generated by the sale of electricity was too low to make it cost effective. Given the extraordinary hike in the unit cost of electricity since this decision was made, is it being looked at again, as the cost-benefit ratio must now be more favourable? Using solar panels to produce electricity must also be better than carbon-based options like fracking or extracting more gas from the North Sea. I call on Councillor Jabbar to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks to Ms Shaw for her question. I agree that generating power from local renewable sources is far better than using fossil fuel. This particular project is currently under review, Madam Mayor, and if the business case stacks up, then we will be definitely doing this. I think we need more projects of this nature, which gives us power from renewable sources, but also actually in this current climate provides security and cost effective, which we desperately need. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Hayley Wood. We write to you as Oldham Foster Carers Working Group. We are a group of foster carers whose aim is to bring improvements to the lives of Oldham local authority foster carers and their children and young people. Sadly, the group are finding themselves having to follow this route to get our elected leaders to listen to our plight and to take seriously our concerns with regards to the cost of living and energy crisis and the ongoing pressure and effects it is having on our carers and the children in their care. Carers cannot continue to care for their children and young people to statutory requirements without adequate resources that are needed to meet them. While the 4% uplift, which was applied to the children's allowance earlier this year, and the £250 one-off payment was welcome, it does not meet the extra cost to what is needed to carry out our role and to give the young people in our care the experiences they should be having. It is a sad fact that carers are now having to make decisions resulting in children missing out on activities, day trips, etc., as carers simply do not have the funds to allow them to do them. Carers are also now using their savings to enable them to live and to subsidise the shortfall they are experiencing due to the inadequate funds they are being given to carry them out their roles. We feel we need to remind the Council that you are corporate parents and it is your duty to ensure that we have given enough care for the children you are responsible for. No foster carer should be out of pocket in the fostering role, yet all foster carers are out of pocket and no concern or regard is being shown by either the Council or the fostering service. Mention should also be given to the foster carers school payment review, which is currently taking place. It is very disappointing that this review has not been completed as yet, and carers are being fobbed off with nonsensical answers which only serves to insult our intelligence. The local authority needs to start looking after existing carers or their recruitment programme is a waste of time as we are unwilling to recommend anyone to foster for Oldham under the present conditions, plus carers are tired of not being listened to and leave. Oldham Foster Caring Workshop Group, with respect, asks that the Council act now to ensure that the children and young people and their carers have what they need to meet the national minimum standard set out by the Department of Education. We need extra finances to meet our obligations and we need it as a matter of urgency. I call on Councillor Morse to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Hayley Wood, for the question. Oldham's foster carers do a fantastic job. We at Oldham Council value and respect our foster carers and we endeavour to provide both the professional and financial support they need to support their vital work. The cost of living and energy crisis brought about by the Conservative government is having a significant impact on all our lives and it appears that the government have failed to recognise the problem that they have caused. But this Labour administration did recognise the problem and this has worked with the Foster Carers Forum, and this has acted proactively to enhance the financial support provided to foster carers by implementing a 4% increase of allowances earlier this year. This financial package is made up of a number of elements. There's fostering allowance, which is paid to cover daily costs of providing for a child and is based on the age of the child, and that ranges from £146 to £224 per week in round figures. There's also a birthday allowance equivalent to 1 week's fostering allowance. There's a festival allowance that's again equal to 1 week's fostering allowance. There's a holiday allowance equivalent to 2 weeks fostering allowance, and they get car usage allowance of 45p per mile. Discretionary payments are also available for miscellaneous items such as initial clothing, school uniforms, spectacles, school photographs, furniture and equipment, etc. Foster carers can also receive payments based on skills. The fostering service are currently reviewing these payments, and this should be completed by the 30th of November. In summary, Oldham does provide a comprehensive package of support for foster carers. Of course, we would love to do more, but at this point I would refer you to lots of things that have been said during this meeting and back to what the leader said about the public finances and the problem that is giving us. We will work with the foster carers, but I can't promise anything at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Simon Wynne. Does Oldham Council have any financial involvement in the recent purchase of Boundary Park by the new owners of Oldham Athletic? And by financial involvement, I mean, have you provided a loan or become joint owners of Boundary Park? I call on Councillor Jabbar to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks to Simon for his question. The Council has had no financial involvement in the recent purchase of Boundary Park by the new owners of Oldham Athletic. The Council is not a joint owner of Boundary Park, nor does it have any outstanding loans with Oldham Athletic. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Jason Pape. Apologise for the pronunciation. I recently spent nearly 2 hours waiting on hold to get through to the council tax team, and it's taken weeks to make progress with my issue. Can the council not do something to make it easier when residents have an issue with services? I call on Councillor Jabbar to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I apologise to Jason for the poor experience he had when he tried to contact the council tax department. We are having, understandably, Madam Mayor, a lot of high demand for our services. Nevertheless, he shouldn't have had that experience. Can I also draw his attention and other people's attention to the fact that we have a website where you can go into my account and actually register yourself and access many services, including council tax. So I'll be encouraging everyone, Madam Mayor, to do that. The information about this service is available on our website. But regardless, I think this experience is not acceptable, and the council is looking to improve the performance in this area. And I'll be working with the director responsible to make sure that the contact centre provides better service. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Anita Lowe. During my attendance at one of the big conversation events held by Oldham Council at East Methodist Church with previous Chief Executive, with Chief Executive Harry Catterall and the previous Council Leader Arush Shah leading the event. Ms Shah made a statement after the questions were raised, and I quote, "We have a nice surprise for something happening at Mum's Princess Gate, and I've decided to divulge the news this evening. To confirm the agreement of a new build of a hotel and supermarket on the site at Mum's. The Chief Executive agreed and said it was great news for the area. Please can the Chief Executive confirm any further news regarding this information that was spoken at this meeting regarding the hotel and supermarket plans? As these plans go back to November 2018, when £60 million was allocated for the Princess Gate Master Plan, as stated in the Oldham Times by a local democracy reporter and by another previous council leader. Of course, we observe the housing development taking place nearby on the Oldham bypass, which in effect will have no longer be a bypass with traffic light restrictions for access to the development. But my question for you is, when is the hotel and supermarket ever going to appear? Or are these all fake statements and false promises? I call on Councillor Chatterton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I thank Anita Lowe for a question as well? With regards to the development plan at Mumps, the Council entered into a legal agreement in 2019, which would see a new supermarket and hotel built by the purchaser. During the COVID pandemic, the original planning and development timescales were delayed by the developer. However, the lack of progress is noted by the Council and it is frustrating given the legal contract that is in place. However, the local economy is seeing unprecedented situations with a combination of effects of Brexit, the pandemic and the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. We can understand why our local communities are frustrated though, and while we share that frustration, the Council are in continued dialogue with the developer to chase progress. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, it's the last question, and we've got 1 minute, and it was submitted by Mark Birchall. With the spectre of HMOs springing up at great pace in Oldham, and some actual being 2-bedroomed small terrace being converted into 4-bedroom bedsits with no living accommodation, residents are in fear of turning up on their doorstep, devaluing their properties overnight and bringing the well-documented issues along with them. Many families in the B&B awaiting a home. How can this be allowed to happen in this borough? We are creating a looming problem with this rise. Interestingly, you have been talking about this for over a year as council, alongside our local MP, Jim McMahon. Are these just platitudes you want residents to hear, or are they actually discussions to implement something? It surprises me that Liverpool Council, in their wisdom, only took 2 months from discussion to implementation to stop this problem. Yourselves as a council, along with RP, have been doing this for over a year. When you'll actually do something is the answer we're all waiting for. Call on Councillor Chatterton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank Mr Birchall for his question as well, and I know this is going to come up later on. The Council does monitor HMOs, however there's no evidence that would justify the removal of a permitted development rights for the conversion of a home to a 3 to 6 bedroom HMO through an Article 4 direction. There has to be a cumulative impact which is proven to harm the local area for us to instigate an Article 4. This does not apply in any community in Oldham, and there's no evidence of an increase in upheld complaints against HMO properties or their occupiers as causing harm through their presence or actions to other residents. All of the HMO proposals already require planning permission. The comparisons to Liverpool are not appropriate and don't make sense, as the challenge with HMOs in parts of Liverpool is far greater due to their high demand for student HMOs, coupled with the non-student HMOs in certain areas of the city, creating significant clusters of HMOs in those areas of the city of Liverpool. The number of HMOs being created in Oldham is far smaller and is not clustered in any one particular area. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The 4 remaining questions will appear on the Council website. The next part of this section is questions to Leader and Cabinet with a time limit of 30 minutes. I have advance notice of questions. The Conservative Leader will ask his questions. Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My first question to the Leader. I am aware that some data from the Highways Department is no longer available to us. Excuse me. 2 areas of concern is the gully cleaning and street cleaning service. I have noticed in my ward in particular, the streets do not appear to have been swept for some time, and speaking to other ward councillors within the borough, they have shared the number of blocked gullies in their wards. Please would you be able to let me know if our teams are having difficulty in providing these services? We are told each time we report these problems that the aim is for the vehicle to attend each area once per annum, unless the situation is an emergency. It now appears we are unable to check this out, and this surely goes against the Council's aim to provide transparency in all our work. Thank you.
Thank you. Call on the leader to respond.
Thank you, and can I thank Councillor Sheldon for his question. I'm not aware that there's a data issue or if there's any been particular changes to how the data is provided, so I can look into that. I can get particular updates if Councillor Sheldon so wishes on which particular areas. It's my understanding that it is still once per annum that they go round. Obviously though, the streets do need to be clear from cars, and I know in certain areas we've got high propensity of parked cars that can create issues, but I will look into that and come back to me. If Councillor Sheldon wants to spend any specific areas he wants me to look into, then I can do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon, your second question, please.
Can I thank Councillor Chadderton for that reply? The second question, a recent report on the town square redevelopment found that a shaft to a coal pit was found underneath this site. Surprisingly, it was claimed that this was hidden, something which I find hard to believe. Why was this not picked up before purchasing the property? Please can the leader confirm how much it will cost to make the coal pit or shaft safe? How much has been spent on fixing issues such as the roof and the backlog of repairs identified when the building was sold? Who carried out the checks to the Spindles Town Square estate, and whether their reports were accurate? What is the relationship between Oldham Council and CBRE, and who signed off the contracts to pay for the work they carried out? And finally, how much in total will be spent on redeveloping the site? Will the leader please provide a pounds and pence figure? Thank you.
Thank you. I call on the leader to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank Councillor Sheldon for his question. Given the nature and the detail that requires, I'll provide a written update to Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you. The leader of the Liberal Democratic Group will ask his questions. Councillor Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My first question tonight is about the raging inflation that's now at 10% plus, and an item that was touched upon in a public question, and that's of Princess Gate. In his budget amendment speech in February this year, my colleague Councillor Gloucester warned the Labour administration that if this council continues with its current approach to regeneration and transformation, then we are increasing the risk of becoming a financially failing council due to the massive amount of increased borrowing that will be required to complete projects like Spindles, Tommyfield Market, the Eco Centre, the new centre, Town Centre Park, Old Library, Cultural Quarter, the new theatre and new Archive Centre, amongst others. And all this was before inflation rates rocketed to more than 10%. I want to focus on just one of those projects, and it's the long promised Princess Gate down at Mumps. On September the 12th, 1962, US President John F. Kennedy told the American people, "We shall go to the moon." It was an ambitious speech, Madam Mayor, but it was also an inspiring one, because just 2,504 days later, on the 20th of July 1969, mankind witnessed the first lunar landing. Madam Mayor, it's more than 2,900 days since Jim McMahon set out his vision of a £60 million game-changer redevelopment that will deliver 150,000 square feet of retail space and be populated by the UK's retail giants, along with 800 homes and 700 parking spaces. That vision has been significantly watered down over the years. We started with the talk of missing retail giants like Marks and Spencer's, and now it's a Travelodge and a Lidl. It's even been more than 8 years, Madam Mayor, and Labour still haven't delivered Jim McMahon's game changer. but we do have some car parking spaces. To put it bluntly, it's taken Oldham Labour to deliver a budget hotel and a budget supermarket longer than it took mankind to put a man on the moon. Madam Mayor, can the leader update the council on the impact of plus 10% inflation on Oldham's regeneration projects, and can the people of Oldham expect to welcome the long-promised Princess Gate redevelopment, and when? Because so far, the date on progress today has been far from interstellar.
Thank you for your long question, Councillor Sykes. I call on the leader to respond.
Thanks, thanks, Madam Mayor. Could I thank Councillor Sykes for his question? So first off, I mean, we're not on the verge of becoming financial and viable because it's not led through borrowing. It's all external funding in terms of the spindles, the archive and the old library as well. But it's also a vision. It doesn't mean those things are about to be delivered today or tomorrow and we have money for it. We continuously bid for these projects, so it's not borrowed. It is all, nearly all, external funding in regards to some of that. Now, obviously, in relation to Princess Gate, this was the last question as well from the public, wasn't it, with a question from Anita Lowe. The reality is, we are enthralled to private companies about how this can be developed. You know, I wouldn't allow, and previous leaders would not allow the council to borrow to such an extent that you did become financially inviable just to get a hotel or a supermarket or another. It's right to be ambitious, but if we went back 4 leaders ago to Jim McMahon and the Marks and Spencers, that was agreed with Marks and Spencers, but then Marks and Spencers closed a lot of their food stores. There was nothing we could do about that as a council. That was a change in their model and a reflection of, I suppose, their funding dipped. And then that didn't happen. In the same way with the supermarket and the hotel at Prince's Gate, as I said, obviously that we did go into a financial agreement with him in 2019, but planning permission hasn't come forward. You know, it is a source of frustration. It's a source of frustration for me, but we wait for them to do it. If it comes forward, and I hope it will come forward, we're in constant dialogue with them, and they say it will come forward, then that's great. But I'm not about to put a load of the council's money forward for it, and we'll have to see what comes back over the coming months from the developer, and that is where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Second question, Councillor Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank the leader for their answer to the question. It's interesting that all Oldham's regeneration projects are driven by external funding, so that'll either be from the government that gives us now or from the King of the North's crumbs off his table. I can't think of any other external funding, Madam Mayor. My second question tonight is something else we've already touched on, and that's about schools. Schools across Oldham are facing immense challenges because of the cost of living crisis. Government failure to keep pace with inflation means that free school meal budgets in Oldham have effectively been cut by more than £200,000 in real terms. Now we are seeing school budgets swallowed by rising energy costs. 9 out of 10 schools across the country say they will run out of money next year. In some cases, schools are seeing their energy bill rise by 100 or 150%. But not only is the government telling schools to fend for themselves with no additional support to meet these rising costs, but our latest Chancellor, don't know, next bloke or woman might say something different, has suggested finding even more cuts from public services. These cuts, as regards schools, will mean many things, but they'll also mean less teaching hours, less teaching assistants, and less teachers. This is not just because Councillor Sykes says so, it's because Paul Whiteman, the General Secretary of the National Association of Head Teachers, says so, hardly an organisation that's known for its left-wing views. So my question to the leader tonight is, what cost of living support will we as a council be able to bring forward for schools, specifically to help with food and warmth, so that children in Oldham are not left to suffer lack educational opportunity because of the indifference of this cruel, cruel government?
Thank you. I call on the leader to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I share Councillor Sykes' concerns about the funding of schools. I mean, it's about to get an awful lot worse because of inflation, but actually the funding for schools hasn't been right for years and years now. Do you know, it's not right that we have primary schools classes of 36. Do you know, we've regressed as a society about how we value education in this country. Now, we're in constant dialogue with the schools, and I met with some of our head teachers recently about things that we can do with them. But it's not necessarily one package for all schools. We have to look at how schools, because certain schools will, you know, obviously in certain communities that will need one thing, communities outside of that area will need a different thing, but we are in constant dialogue with the schools. Our DCS and Leads for Education attend our head teachers and primary head teachers meetings as well. So we're there, but the funding for schools is not a formula that I can control, unfortunately. I have concerns about where that's going, but in the same way as Councillor Sykes, I have concerns about where the funding for all of public services is going over the coming years. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The Leader of the Failsworth Independent Party to ask his question. Councillor Oldham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was pleased to see that the Council found £3 million to invest in responding to the cost of living crisis. Although I have said previously, I disagree with how the funds are being used and whether the Leader's idea of what residents require is being met. Having received a nice glossy leaflet, which is more like a Labour Party newsletter, I still wonder if the funds are being used in the most productive and appropriate way. The Leader said earlier that Oldhamers need help. Then they do need help. They need help from this Labour administration, from a party that's been in control of Oldham for way too many years now, and they need help from a party that has led the poorest of this borough into poverty and not done much about it. You cannot go on blaming central government all the time. So my questions to the Leader: could you tell us how many calls have been received by this specialist helpline for which almost £500,000 has been allocated? And will she support residents, giving them some real help with finances and an ability to forward plan by agreeing a council tax freeze for the next 2 financial years? Thank you.
Thank you. A call on the Leader to respond.
Thank you. So, I'm not from a party that promises unfunded tax cuts, so I won't be promising a council tax freeze, and it'd be highly irresponsible for me to do that. We don't know what the local government funding settlement is going to look like in 2 months' time, and we have to wait for that before any budget decisions made either next April or the April following. But I share Councillor Hoban's frustrations about council tax, and as I said previously, we're all residents of this town. I'd love to pay less council tax as well, but I'd love most for our revenue budget to go up, because then I would be able to freeze council tax. But in the same way, I'd like social care to be funded properly, because also that's another thing that's put on council tax. And this is a government that makes council taxpayers pay for their own services. Now at the moment, if you rise it above a certain level, you have to go to a referendum. Now, if talk is to believe, the government are about to remove that and allow councils to increase council tax up to a higher level. Now, our funding comes from government that is predicated on us increasing council tax to the highest possible level. And everybody knows that, and if they don't know that, then they need to do a course in local government finance, because that is the reality of where we sit with the council tax situation. Now, in terms of how many calls have come in, I can't tell you today off the top of my head, but what is coming forward is a monthly dashboard to tell us how many calls are coming in, where they're coming from, how many people that we're helping, what's coming back from the doorstep engagement team, because we know the cost of living response, and I welcome the fact that Councillor Holborn welcomed it in spite of his initial scepticism, but we know over the coming months and over the next 18 months, some of that will have to be moved and realigned, but we don't know where to support them if we don't know what that looks like. So we are working on a cost of living dashboard, which will tell us all those figures. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Pythian to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Park House on Sandy Lane in Royton was due to be redeveloped into flats. Due to the developers going into liquidation, this plan has not come into fruition. Subsequently, the building has fallen into more disrepair and use are constantly breaking in and causing problems for residents. Can the relevant cabinet member find out if the council can step in and compulsory purchase this fantastic historical building? Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Chadderton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank Councillor Fithian for his question as well. It's recognised how much impact buildings of this nature can have within the local community, and as Councillor Fithian said, this situation has been going on for a number of years now. The priority for the Council in the first instance is around facilitating a commercial development of the site coming forward, and CPO action must be a last resort. We'll therefore work flexibly with any interested parties in order to facilitate the original plans coming to fruition. In the meantime, we'll take a number of actions in respect to the poor condition of the building. This includes officers within environmental health working to ensure that the building is secure and safe. Legal officers have formally written to the landowner clarifying their responsibility in respect to the property and formally requesting that they take all relevant action to ensure that the building remains secure and safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Alias to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With hoarding going up across the town centre and residents starting to notice the work underway on creating a better place, can the relevant cabinet member provide an update on the Labour administration's ambitious plans for the region of Oldham town centre?
Thank you. I call on Councillor Chadderton to respond.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank Councillor Alias for his question as well. It is great news that our residents recognise the progress in delivering our plans for a thriving town centre with various schemes moving from design into delivery. This is evidenced by the hoardings now visible at the spindles as progress continues, but also the cranes and scaffolding at locations across the borough. Regeneration plans are not just about investment in new and existing buildings, but it's about creating real and meaningful change for our residents and businesses within Oldham. Our ambitious plans for a thriving town centre will unlock millions of pounds worth of investment to create more than 2,000 new homes in Oldham town centre, 1,000 new jobs and 100 new apprenticeship opportunities. The programme has already successfully secured millions of pounds from the external funding, including the Towns Fund, Future High Street Fund, and we continue to seek out and apply for further funding opportunities to complement and reduce the demand on public funds. The two main projects in flight to provide you with a complete update this evening, but we're committed to delivery as there's been years of discussions and approvals, and our communities deserve to see the plans delivered and operational as soon as reasonably possible to ensure that we have a thriving Oldham town centre, new homes to live and new opportunities to work. We're equally conscious of ensuring our residents, local businesses and local communities benefit from the regeneration plans, but we are monitoring progress closely, ensuring value for money and social value is embedded in every project, with an annual progress report being discussed recently at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Harrison to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I congratulate the students of this borough who worked really hard in difficult circumstances to achieve GCSE, BTEC, A and T level results that they did. However, does the Cabinet Member for Education and Skills agree with Labour's Shadow Education Minister that 12 years of Conservative government have left a legacy of unequal outcomes that are holding back our kids and our communities? Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Ali to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Harrison for her question. First of all, I want to say a massive well done for all of the efforts made by young people undertaking GCSE, BTEC, A-level and T-level this year in Oldham. The past few years have been incredibly tough on young people. Having to learn and take exams throughout the COVID pandemic made an already difficult time just a bit harder. I hope that all achieved what they needed to continue studies or take up work-related opportunities. GCSE and A-level grade rates improved across the board compared with the last exams in 2019. Results for Oldham's children looked after, including those in foster and care homes, were positive, with many getting what they needed to get to progress to college and university or begin apprenticeship and employment. I'm incredibly proud of what our young people achieved in Oldham, especially under some difficult circumstances. I agree that the 12 years of Conservative government has left a legacy of unequal outcomes that are holding kids back. It is not levelling up, it feels more like levelling down. This year's GCSE and A-level results for England and Wales have shown a widening regional gap. The north-south educational divide has sharpened this year. GCSE results in England showed a regional gap of more than 10 percentage points between top grades in the south versus the north. The deepening education divide needs to be fixed urgently, along with some of the place-based challenges such as housing and health if we are serious about driving standards in education. Children in Oldham have missed more school sessions here than London and the South East, resulting in disproportionate learning loss. The failure in the implementation of the National Tutoring Programme, which is aimed at making up for the lost learning during the pandemic, had only exacerbated the problem. For example, 58.8% of the target schools in the North East benefited from the programme, compared with 96.1% of those targeted in the South East and 100% in the South West. After a period of such turbulence and having had, I've lost count, Madam Mayor, I think 9 or 10 education secretaries. In just 6 years, the sector desperately needs a period of stability to address the gaps in attainment for pupils from disadvantaged backgrounds. A Labour government will continue to be ambitious for every child, ending tax break for private schools and investing in thousands of new teachers to give every child the brilliant teaching and school experience they need to achieve. Hope that answers your question, Councillor Harrison. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Murphy to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ambulances queued outside, beds filling the corridors of A&E and staff running around and parking carnage. Likened to a scene from a disaster film, this is Oldham Royal Hospital, A&E on a daily basis. I find it mind-blowing that there are beds and privacy curtains in corridors and staff waiting to walk past while nurses and doctors treat patients in privacy, having become the norm. This is not a criticism of the staff who work extremely hard in very challenging circumstances. It's easy to see why we love our NHS. This is a criticism of the situation they find themselves in. Why are outside contractors being used to prop up the ambulance service by providing staff and ambulances? Repairing the failure of primary care services must be the answer to relieving the pressures of A&E and the ambulance service. Will the leader and relevant cabinet member commit to making services at Oldham Royal Hospital one of their top priorities, so things like curtains can remain on walls, not on the A&E corridors? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Brownridge to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I entirely share Councillor Murphy's concerns. I think everybody seen scenes like this on the television across the country. And this is an issue of lack of resource, both personnel and finance, as a result of long period of underinvestment or non-investment by this Tory government. I'm delighted to say the officers have been successful in securing an extra £1.9 million investment to cope with winter pressures, and a lot of that will go into social care, because I think we know one of the problems is it's not just a hospital issue, this is an issue of social care which is grossly and terribly underfunded. So we are committed, and I would say as an example, the government's promised 6,000 new GPs. We haven't seen a single one rock up in Oldham yet. Now we as an administration are committed to doing what we can to make the system work better. The new integrated care system is an opportunity for us to work even more closely with the NHS and our health colleagues, and trust me, we are going to make the most of that opportunity. But ultimately, this is a reflection on the fact that whatever the government says, it has not valued our health service, it has not invested money in the care of people who are vulnerable. Cost of that care goes up because we can't intervene early enough, so we end up with people in crisis, and that costs even more. We have some of the best discharge procedures, and we are the most successful in not bed blocking in Greater Manchester and indeed nationally, but we still have a core of people who are stuck in hospital because there's nowhere for them to go, because their needs are so great, there's nowhere to meet those needs. So this is a fundamental problem of lack of commitment by the government, despite what they say. And like education, we've had a lot of health secretaries, I mean, Teresa Coffey with her ABC, you know, fantastic, achieved nothing. So yes, I can guarantee that as an administration we are working and doing the best we possibly can, but we are up against it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Sharp to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following a recent consultation with residents in Westwood and Chadderton, it would appear development proposals have been withdrawn. It's my understanding that contracts are about to be signed for major developments on sites in Durka. However, there has been no consultation, despite this being promised with residents in the wider community. Could the leader please explain why there are consultations in some areas and not all? Or is this once again an example of the St James ward being neglected? Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Chadderton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I thank Councillor Sharp for the question as well? Now, I'm not sure whether Councillor Sharp is being deliberately misleading or she doesn't know what's going on in her own ward or in other parts of Oldham, and I also don't know which one's worse. I suspect it probably is a bit of both, if we're being honest, aren't we? Consultation requirements come down to what is required by legislation or funding requirements as to whether public consultation is necessary for any given proposal. The proposals in Chadderton North and Westwood and Colders are significantly different, being an active travel neighbourhood, to what is proposed in Durka with regards to new housing. However, in the case of the development at Durka, of the brownfield housing site, there isn't a contractual obligation for a consultation. However, the developer partner has agreed to hold community engagement and consultation sessions on the proposal. So it's not a case of the council neglecting any certain ward over another when confirming arrangements to undertake public consultation events. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Dean to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. After 2 very challenging years for young people who received their exam results earlier this year, this is a particularly challenging time for our looked after children who will be considering their options, including further education and employment. Could the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People please tell us the support and guidance what is available to young people are making the decisions that will impact on their future? Thank you.
I call on Councillor Morse to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dean. You're right, the young people in care in Oldham need all the support we can give them, and we do that. And we know we've got some fantastic young people in Oldham. So we do provide statutory careers advice for all children and young people. This is provided by schools and colleges. In addition, a wider partnership approach across education, children's social care and wider agencies provides an enhanced offer for our children looked after. Our virtual school coordinates extra support and targeted activities for young people in our care to assist them and those directly supporting them to make decisions that will impact on the rest of their lives. This is provided through dedicated education officers within the virtual school across the different education phases, including post-16. The virtual school delivers a range of programmes to raise aspirations and participation, utilising information and data, personal education plans with the young person's voice, wishes and aspirations at the centre. The virtual school and post-16 service provides education and careers updates and support with raising aspirations to all those working with children looked after, and engages fully with colleagues from GMCA and coordinates offers across the city region. In summary, we recognise that the care experience young people experience, they have experienced multiple disadvantages and therefore ensure that there are a variety of education, training and personal development support options available from a wide range of agencies. And some of our young people go to achieve extremely well. They're going on to all sorts of further education and we should be really proud of them. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last question that we can have. The next part of this section is question on Cabinet minutes. I call on Councillor Chadderton to move and Councillor Jabbar to second that the Council notes the minutes of the Cabinet as circulated.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do any members who are not Cabinet members wish to ask a question on the Cabinet minutes? I have had advance notice of a question. Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With reference to page 51, the Cabinet minutes of the 21st of September, item 6, on Oldham's response to the cost of living. Would the Cabinet member explain why the Oldham's cost of living response consistently mentions a budget of £3 million, happily inviting hard-working families across the borough to believe that they will be receiving £3 million worth of help this year, when in fact the budget is less than half that, at £1.2 million? Would the Cabinet member also like to explain why the Council's plan for warm banks, a Liberal Democrat amendment, involves keeping warm spaces like libraries open for not 1 minute longer than their standard opening hours? The library in my own ward of Lees remains open for the exact same number of hours in November when it has been a so-called warm bank as it did in September when it wasn't.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Chatterton to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, the Liberal Democrats have got more front than Blackpool. They obviously haven't changed that much from 2010 when they went into coalition with the Tories, because I cannot believe a Liberal Democrat has stood up to slag off a £3 million investment in our cost of living campaign. In regards to the £1.2 million, the reason it's not £3 million, the full thing is £3 million, but it's over a 2-year period. Because the reality is, it's not just the next 6 months that our residents are going to suffer, they're going to suffer over the next 2 years as well. And that's why we don't want to withdraw funding and support that we've got in straight away. Now, in regards to the warm banks, it's absolutely laughable that Councillor Kenyon suggests that this came around because of some opposition amendment or motion. This was in train since July, since I held a cost of living summit. I mean, there are now 306 warm banks across Greater Manchester. Would Councillor Kenyon and the rest of the Liberal Democrats like to take responsibility for all of them? It's absolutely pathetic. Now, in relation to what times they open, this is being monitored on a weekly basis. I've been to 2 of the warm banks so far. The reality is, it's been relatively warm, hasn't it? We've had mild weather so far, so their usage hasn't increased to the level that we expect at the moment. But week in, week out, they're being monitored. We speak to the residents that go there because they are already well used. A lot of them are being well used for people that suffer from social isolation. You know, during the day, they like to go out, have a cup of tea, speak to other people as well. And that is part of it as well. It's not just for people in the evenings. It's to get people out of their homes any time of the day. But now, clocks have gone back, it's getting darker at night, so it's likely that they will amend times, at least some of them, but that will be area by area. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Alan Deamy to ask a question.
Al-Hamdani, thank you. On item 9, page 48, on community health and adult management, it was reporting an adverse variance, or that's overspend, of budget of £7.582 million. Children's social care was recording £4.137 million adverse variance. Oldham has some of the worst levels of poverty, its associated problems in Greater Manchester, and this is a demand-led service. Levels of demand have remained high after the pandemic, and they are showing no sign of slowing. And third-party providers of out-of-borough for specialist care services are very expensive. They provide a service in what is essentially a seller's market. So which of these things was a surprise to the administration, and when will it commit to more accurately forecasting the accounts for these factors? Thank you. It's okay.
I call on Councillor Brownridge to respond. Oh.
I think a cabinet was Councillor Jabars, wasn't it?
Councillor Jabars, sorry.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks to Councillor Al-Hamdani for his question. The adverse variance for both community health and adult social care, children's services, to which the question relates to, the pressure relates to the legacy of COVID. Across the 2 services, this adverse variance is 11.98 million, although the direct funding from the central government to support impact of COVID has not been extended to this financial year. The pressure continues. When the council set its budget for 22-23, an assessment was made of likely ongoing impact of COVID based on experience of 21-22. A sum of £12 million was held centrally to fund from council funds, council-owned funds, to offset any COVID legacy cost. This funding was not directly allocated to services, as there was no certainty where the pressure would fall. Therefore, the adverse variance of 11.989 million is completely offset by the 12 million corporate resources shows accurate forecasting. Okay? Sorry, Madam Mayor. It is true that adult social care and children's services are demand-led and financial pressures are being experienced, especially with regards to the external placement of children. This is the same for every local authority with such responsibility. Every effort is being made to set budget accurately and manage resources across the council as a whole, although there will be inevitably some variance, especially at a time where there are so much volatility in the economy and the demand in the system, much of which could not have been anticipated when the initial budget was set. I mean, Madam Mayor, the leader, when she spoke in her annual statement, she made that point that we are facing enormous demands from particularly adult social care and children's services. And we do everything we can to predict a budget which is accurate. But we cannot anticipate how many people are going to come through, especially through this period of extreme financial pressure on the household. So I hope that gives you the reassurance that we're doing everything we can to manage the finances in a best possible way. But circumstances are so difficult, inevitably there will be variance. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Woodvine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question on the September Cabinet Minutes, Oldham's cost of living response. I would like to know, firstly, how much the 51. I would like to know, firstly, Madam Mayor, how much the booklet cost, which was printed and was distributed across the borough, which seemed to me to be a publicity stunt for the leader. Secondly, I would like to know, point out, I should say, that £400,000 of this £3 million was from the Conservative government. So I was wondering if the leader had written a thank you card to the Prime Minister. And I would like to finish by saying that due to the failing leadership of the council, Oldham Council is forecast to overspend by at least £6 million in this financial year. So does the leader agree with me that this is a reckless use of reserves and taxpayers' money?
Which Cabinet member would like to respond, or the leader? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, I try to write to the government a lot, but often it gets sent back because it's always to the wrong person, which is an issue, isn't it, at the moment? And in terms of a reckless use of money, so do you know what? So, Councillor Oldham before, and I found the figure now about how many calls we've had into that helpline. 1,700 calls from residents. I was at Oldham Food Bank last week. Oldham Food Bank have fed 14,700 families across this borough since the start of this year. That's already more than they did do for the whole of last year. I'd actually argue this isn't enough money to deal with the cost of living crisis. This will go some way to alleviate the pressure on our families. But it will absolutely not be able to lift our families out of poverty. It will stop some people falling into further poverty or hitting poverty and crisis at all. But if we think £3 million is going to reverse 12 years of austerity, is going to reverse 45% of our revenue budget taken away, and the gross impact of the pandemic when we didn't get enough funding from the government anyway, it's absolutely fanciful. So no, it's absolutely not a waste of public money. The feedback from our residents is they're responsive, from the food banks, from the warm hubs and everything, and you can see how people are getting in Also, though, this is part of a communications campaign, which was part of the booklet. We have to show to people that help is out there, that we are doing something, but unless we promote it, we're not going to do it. In the same way, there's a Greater Manchester campaign for the pension top-up credits. £70 million is unclaimed in pension credit across Greater Manchester at the moment. That is £70 million that could go into older people's and vulnerable people's pockets and household that is being unclaimed. The same with free school meals. But we have to do that. We have to get out there and tell them. And I wholly reject, and I know the majority of Oldham side with me on this, that this is a waste of our money. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just that last sentence then, I'd like to know how the leader knows that the majority of Oldham are with her.
Because of all the people I speak to, the feedback that I get, the feedback that we get through the resident survey, the feedback that we get...
Come to Failsworth, Amanda.
So, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. To item 11, which is notice of administration business. There's 30 minutes for this item. And before I ask members to speak, can I remind all members it's 30-minute time limit, this section, and group leaders have proposed that timings are amended to ensure the business runs smoothly. Does Council agree that, where there is an amendment to a motion, the timings are amended as follows, with no extensions? Mover and seconder of the motion, a 4-minute time limit. Mover and seconder of an amendment, 1-minute time limit. And a 1-minute time limit for the right of reply. Does Council agree to suspend Council Procedure Rules 14.5, length of speeches? Those for? Those against? Any abstentions? That's carried. I call on Councillor Kay Pythian to move and Councillor Chadderton to second the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oldham residents need clear government action to tackle the housing crisis and build the homes we need. Here in Oldham, the Labour Party are doing all we can to provide decent homes for Oldhamers, but we need central government to do more. We have over 7,000 households on our social housing waiting list, and this is growing as the situation becomes more desperate for the people of our town. And yet government refused to fund general needs social housing homes. We need urgent clarification of the government's housing and planning policies and assurance that Section 21 evictions will be abolished in this session of Parliament to protect private renters as the Tories promised in their 2019 manifesto. Because the truth is, while Section 21 evictions remain lawful, the private rented sector does not provide security for tenants. The Tories have already watered down requirements for developers to provide affordable homes, and there has been rumblings that they may try and go further, but this must stop. The disastrous mini-budget and its eventual reversal has meant that Oldhamers are facing increased mortgage bills of nearly £7,000 a year. Madam Mayor, this is unsustainable for many families in Oldham. A sudden increase in household expenditure by this much is unaffordable for so many of our residents who are just about managing as things are. For all the talk of levelling up, what progress has this Tory government made to make homes more affordable for Oldhamers? Absolutely none. And thanks to economic mismanagement on an unprecedented scale, the dream of home ownership will remain just that, a dream. This motion calls for 6 key measures to kickstart our journey to ending the housing crisis. Madam Mayor, we are heading off a cliff edge. We need good quality and affordable homes built now. We can't rely on the private sector to fulfil this on the scale that is required, and that is why I ask Council to support this motion tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Chadderton to second the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oldhamers want, need and deserve decent, affordable homes. It really is that simple. In the past 12 years of Tory-led governments, we've had 6 Prime Ministers, 7 Chancellors of the Exchequer, 9 Secretaries responsible for housing, and that's if I only include Michael Gove once, and 13 housing ministers. This is not sustainable. We're in a crisis, and we're in a housing crisis. I want to pick up on 2 points briefly: housing supply and demand, and then onto the Section 21 notices. As Councillor Fithian alluded to, we have 7,000 families on Oldham on our housing register. We urgently need to build more homes to provide Oldhamers with a decent place to live. In Oldham, we are doing some great work to build mixed tenure homes on brownfield land. I recently visited Vernon Gardens in Royton to see the affordable homes on site, which were all snapped up with a minute going live. For each house, there were 500 applications, Madam Mayor. In Durka, we're building 132 new homes, with a third of those being affordable. At Southlink, we're building 127 new homes, with a third of them being affordable. On Fitton Hill, we're building 87 affordable homes. In Princess Bank, we've directly delivered 19 affordable 4 and 5 bed low carbon family homes. And on Hollybank, we've delivered £5 million 20 bed affordable housing. We're seeing new housing developments across the whole of Oldham, but demand is outstripping supply. We have significant numbers of people who want to live in Oldham, they want to contribute to the place, they want to raise a family here, but because of high prices and interest rates, they're unable to. The knock-on effect of this is an increasing number of people in the private rented sector who are at the mercy of landlords they hope are reasonable, who don't put up their rent to an extortionate level, who manage the house to be kept in good condition. And on top of this, residents in the private rented sector also have the threat of a Section 21 hanging over their head. Section 21 is where a landlord can give 2 months' notice for a tenant to leave their property without any fault established on the part of the tenant. The use of Section 21 is having a devastating impact on some of our residents. It creates uncertainty, it leads to an increase in homelessness, sofa surfing and the use of temporary accommodation. I myself have an increasing number of casework requests regarding Section 21 notices, and just recently I've had a single woman of 2 children, and the landlord increased their rent to £900 a month. She was unable to afford that, leaving her 2 school-aged children in a panic to find somewhere else to live. The abolition of Section 21 notice was a 2019 manifesto commitment from the Conservative Party. The fact that this government hasn't outlawed Section 21 evictions in the past 3 years, yet despite it being a key manifesto pledge and them having a majority of 80, is bizarre, but also systematic of a government that says a lot, but actually does very little of any real benefit. And we believe today the announcement has been that the new Prime Minister, again, has set out there to abandon several more of their 2019 manifesto commitments. But the reality is, affordable, good quality housing is imperative for everybody. We can't expect people to lead decent lives if they have no security with something as basic and fundamental as housing. Madam Mayor, we need a massive push to get more houses built for Oldhamers, and we need to end the misery that is caused by Section 21, and that is why I urge members to back this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Chadderton. There's actually 2 amendments on this motion. So I now call on Councillor Woodbine and Lancaster, and to politely remind you that you do have 1 minute, which we will adhere to. Thank you. Councillor
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Putting politics aside, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Pithian on what I believe was his maiden speech to the Council. I'm sure the amendment to procedural rules was only intended to shut me up, but I'll keep to 1 minute, Madam Mayor. Quite simply, I will say that Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister, and I'm very pleased about this, because he is a clever and competent person, and he puts the Labour administration in Oldham to shame. While they continue to make silly spending decisions, go over budget and burden the people of Oldham, who are supposedly amongst the most deprived in the country, you could talk about cuts, but levelling up alone has seen over £100 million invested into the borough in additional funding. So you can read the failures of Oldham Labour in my amendment, which is before you, and I would like to thank Mr Sunak for showing real leadership for our United Kingdom. Perhaps if Councillor Chadderton takes some notes, she won't be the 3rd consecutive Labour leader in Oldham to lose her seat in May.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Lancaster to second the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In my brief time serving on this Borough Council, just 18 months now, I dread to think how much time we have all wasted on mock Parliament-style business from this Labour administration, month after month debating what topic to write a letter about and which government minister to address it to. This Borough would likely be doing a damn sight better if we instead use these meetings properly as an opportunity to develop and improve the performance of this council. I am happy to second the Conservative Group amendment in Councillor Woodvine's name in the fleeting hope that we can establish a cordial professional relationship with the UK Government for the betterment of our borough. I am also pleased that this amendment actually contains resolutions that can be actioned by this council, approaches that we can control here and adopt. Approving this amendment would be a novel but welcome change from poor regular working order. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Does the next section is, does any member wish to speak on the amendment? But I would ask you that, you know, if you stick to the minute, because that's what the seconders have done. So if anybody wants to speak? No, thank you. It's been asked to go to the vote. Is that an agreement? Oh, yeah, sorry. You're rushing me, Howard. Thank you. Does Councillor Pythian wish to reply?
I waive right of reply, Madam Mayor.
Does Councillor Woodvine wish to reply? No. Does Council agree to the amendment? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The amendment's carried. Lost. Sorry. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. Right. Going to Amendment 2. I'm going to say this right this time. Call on Councillor Al-Hamdani to move. to move. And Councillor Sykes to second an amendment. Councillor Hamdani.
Thank you. Perfectly said, Madam Mayor. First of all, tiny amendment. I don't believe it's the colour of a rosette that determines whether a government is doing a good thing. And I know that I've seen the same polls as you have, but don't get cocky about it. The main part of this amendment is that one of the points was saying that the current developers' intentions on affordable houses shouldn't be watered down. That suggests that they're anything like good enough. I am fed up of coming to planning committee at this council and being told that we can't have the affordable homes that we want, that we can't have the education support that we want. All of the things that are really, really important that we should be getting when developers are building houses, and we're not allowed to have them. It's not a case that it shouldn't be watered down, it should be strengthened. We should be given more support, we should be given legislative support, we should be given financial support. We should get what we deserve when we have development, and it's really important. Thank you. Support the amendment.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Sykes to second the amendment.
See what happens, Madam Mayor, when you get his name right. Briefly, to second...
to keep him on his toes.
To second the amendment, which is meant to be constructive and actually strengthen and take a bit of the scratchy bit out of Labour's proposed ones and make it stronger. It's well rehearsed, it's there in front of everybody, Madam Mayor, and I'd urge members to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Pythian wish to reply?
No reply.
Councillor Al-Hamdini wish to reply?
No, I don't, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Does Council agree with the amendment? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The amendment is carried. Does any member wish to speak on the motion as amended? No. Does Councillor Pythian wish to reply?
No, Madam Mayor.
Does the Council agree the motion as amended? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The motion is carried as amended. Thank you. Motion 2, I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Brownridge to second the motion. Councillor Jabbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Many people will be facing a real financial hardship this coming winter, especially elderly people on low income. We know from government information that there are many people who are entitled to benefits to supplement their household income, but don't do so for whatever reason. This is particularly true, Madam Mayor, for our pensioner. We know that in Greater Manchester, £70 million and in Oldham, £6 million of pension credit is unclaimed each year. We also know, Madam Mayor, that most of the people who are pensioners have worked all their life, some of them in cotton mills where conditions have been extremely difficult. They work to contribute to our economy. And I believe, Madam Mayor, that in retirement these people should live in dignity and we should do everything we can to support them in the best possible way. The application for pension credit is complicated to say the least. On top of that, some people are not aware of their entitlement, and others feel that they do not want handout from government. For this reason, we are calling on government to make changes to the benefit system so that pensioners who are entitled to pension credit can get this benefit automatically. We know everyone is experiencing financial pressure due to cost of living, but pensioners who have income less than what they legally need to live on should be helped in this terribly difficult time. This motion is not asking for additional resources. We're asking simply to make administrative changes so that people who are entitled to pension credit receive it automatically. Government have all the information they need from tax records, from national insurance contribution, from housing benefit and council tax claim to be able to identify people who are entitled to pension credit. Therefore, this change can be made without any difficulties or in requirement of additional resources. We're calling on government to provide pension credit automatically to pensioners who fall below the pension credit baseline. And just to clarify the baseline, Madam Mayor, the weekly rate for pension credit is £182.60 for a single person, and for a couple, £278.70. An uplift in somebody's pension to pension credit level, say by £15 per week, will make a huge difference, especially this winter. This Labour administration will continue to do everything we can to support people during this cost of living crisis, including helping pensioners. However, we do expect our national government to support pensioners who need help in accessing their legal benefit entitlement. And I hope that everyone in this chamber can support this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Brownridge to second the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Jabbar's made a very clear case. I think the motion itself is very clear, so I'm happy to second it formally.
Thank you. This motion also has an amendment. I call on Councillor Quigg to move and Councillor McManus to second. Councillor Quigg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be as brief as possible. You wouldn't think the government had given help to people in this country based on this Labour motion, hence why we've had to put the amendment down. So I'll lay it out. £400 payment to all homes, which is equivalent to £66 a month, a £650 payment to those on benefits, and a £150 payment to those with disabilities, a £300 cost of living payment to pensioners, as well as a removal of green levies, which is equivalent of about £150. Now, some people might be getting nearly £1,000 out of that, but that's because of the cost of living crisis, which has been predicated by the issues in Ukraine, which is where Russia has cut off the gas supply, which affects the global gas supply. We don't have an issue where we have a domestic gas supply which we can draw down on because it's affected by global prices. As I've had to state in the amendment, a 1.5% rise in global inflation, so 1.3% rise in that's globally in inflation, is a massive effect on other countries locally. That's not from me, that's from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is an organisation which I think everyone respects, unless by some imagination they don't.
Thank you, Councillor Quigg. You've run out of time. Councillor McManus to second, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo Councillor Quigg's assessment. I would like to add something else. £60 million has been wasted by Mayor Burnham. £60 million that could be better spent helping older people in Greater Manchester. That's unacceptable. If you would like help drafting a letter to send to Mr Burnham, I offer my services. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I've just got a couple of things to say, really. The motion from the Labour side, and we do actually get a bit of stick for supporting them, but I think it's a bit 50-50. If what they're saying is right, we'll support them. If what we're saying is wrong, we won't support them. On this occasion, they're right, so we're going to support them. However, the amendment is totally ridiculous. And, you know, we've just had a speech about, you know, you need to be doing stuff for Oldham. That's nothing to do with Oldham, what they've just been going on about. That is waving the Conservative flag. Absolute rubbish. There's people in Oldham that are starving. Yeah. There's people in Oldham that are freezing. They've come up with a motion that basically says how we can make sure that the right people are getting this money, and that is why we support it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Right. Does Councillor Jabbar wish to reply?
Of course, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, the proposer and the seconder of the amendment don't actually understand this motion. What we're asking for is calling on government to allow what they're entitled to. These are pensioners, these are people who worked all their life to contribute to our economy. And in old age, they have income less than what the government is saying a person needs to live on. And all we're saying is that this should be automatic because the government have all this information about somebody's income from the records I've mentioned. What is difficult about that? Why do they have to bring Andy Burnham into this and there's the other stuff? It's completely irrelevant. And I'm very grateful to Councillor Gloucester for his support because this is a group of people, Madam Mayor, who we need to help desperately. They have worked all their life and they are pensioners now and they need the legal amount of money set by... Thank you. I oppose the amendment, Madam Mayor.
Does Councillor Quigg wish to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Briefly. These are facts, Councillor Gloucester, that you are not prepared to tell the people of this borough that they're entitled to these amounts. Now, as has obviously been explained by Councillor Hoban tonight and other things, money's being wasted, and we are highlighting that these things could have been better spent. That's all we're asking. That's all this amendment's saying. It's not massively controversial, this amendment, and I think, Madam Mayor, if anyone's got any common sense, please don't support the amendment.
Thank you. Does Council agree the amendment? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The amendment is lost. Does any member wish to speak on the motion as amended? No? Oh. It's not amended. No, it isn't. Oh, sorry. It's getting late. Does Councillor Jabbar wish to reply?
Just very quickly, Madam Mayor, this amendment is about standing by people. Sorry, this motion is about standing by people who need this money because the law says they're entitled to. And all we're asking for a small administrative change to be made so that they can receive this money automatically. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Agree the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The motion is carried. Item 12, may I remind that this is the notice of opposition business. May I remind members that this section at this meeting affords 10 minutes to each opposition motion and will be keeping within those time limits, including amendments. I call on Councillor Al Hamdani to move and Councillor Kenyon to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the motion. First of all, before I go on to discuss the motion, I wanted to read out something from the report that was issued today from Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary. His Majesty, they've not changed the name on the report, I don't, because I copied and pasted it. I'll have to check. Apologies if I've got it wrong. It says, the majority of police officers and staff meet and often exceed the standards of behaviour that the public have a right to expect. I think it's really important to recognise that before looking at a motion of this kind. This is not a motion about the police, this is a motion about the management and the priorities that are set for them. But now I'm going to talk about some of the other things that were covered in that report. They talked about evidence of poor decision-making in police vetting, inconsistent handling of misconduct cases, a lack of effective monitoring of officers' IT use, and then says, yet despite repeated warnings, including several from us, not enough has been done to improve standards and stamp out misogyny and predatory behaviour in policing. In 1 in 5 complaint and misconduct cases examined, they were unimpressed by the force's decision-making. And then a whole paragraph. In a decade leading up to the inspection, a series of reports should have alerted forces that some of them were not properly equipped to prevent and investigate misogynistic and predatory behaviour. We could draw similar conclusions about racism, dishonesty, other forms of corruption. In our inspections, we found that some forces consistently and repeatedly failed to implement recommendations contained in these reports. 2 weeks ago, the Met Police was absolutely carpeted over their failure to deal with misconduct, with claims against officers brought by other officers, brought by families of officers, and there were more than 600 allegations of domestic abuse against officers, 1,809 facing allegations, had multiple complaints against them. Now, that's the Met. So I went to GMP and said, well, what are the figures for GMP for all the same information that the Met has been absolutely carpeted for? And they said, we can't provide that data. Our records aren't kept in a way that allows us to provide that data from anything longer ago than 2020. They don't know what's going on. They could say that there was a minimum of 1,400 cases since 2016, but they couldn't tell me how many of those had multiple officers being accused, what numbers of multiple officers. They just don't know what's going on. Now, that's about the priorities that we set. If I was Andy Burnham, at the time I'd seen that report about the Met, I would have been banging on the door demanding to know those figures. Now, if I've asked that question, maybe he has asked that question, but they couldn't provide the information to me. Now, it was a freedom of information request. If they'd been told to provide that information, then they couldn't have denied it on the basis.
Sam, I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to be rude. What you're saying is fine, but you need to be saying it somewhere else because you've not said a single word about what the motion is. You've not said anything about that, Sam.
I was just specifying. I just asked why Andy Burnham isn't knocking on the door asking for this information. The motion is saying that we don't believe in the way that he's managing GMP. Now, I can go through a number of things. Andy Burnham sat there and said that the previous Chief Constable was sacked because he wouldn't provide a data compliance agreement when we were going through the investigation in Oldham. And we got a new one, but he didn't provide that. Well, why not? And if Andy Burnham was in charge and he sacked the first one because he wasn't doing it, what's going on? That doesn't make any sense. We've had GMP have been told they're failing victims of domestic abuse in 2017, 19, 20, 21. It is not good enough.
Councillor Kenyon to second, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whilst the news that GMP is no longer in special measures after 2 years is very welcome, the fact that Andy Burnham is doing a victory lap of backslapping shows how far our expectations have fallen. We no longer have one of the absolute worst police services in the UK. Yay. Forgive me if I don't do the backflips. I can tell you right now, this news means nothing throughout the borough of Oldham, and people have had enough. There is a huge respect and sympathy for the police on the front line. Police trying to do a job with one arm tied behind their back by an inept mayoral leadership. The other arm twisted off by this Tory government starving them of funds. All the senior team have been replaced since the King in the North took over. There is no one left other than Andy Burnham. Yet we still have a force of hamstrung coppers that can't enforce speeding at night because the speed guns GMP use don't work with headlights. A force that has solemnly promised to turn up to every burglary. I mean, that is their job. A force that still hasn't attended a family's house in my own ward where a man with a machete recently tried to break in. A force that only makes 5,000 arrests per month, despite crimes running at over 30,000 a month. Many people live in fear in this Greater Manchester criminal free-for-all. Andy Burnham, you have proven you can't help, and you lot have proven that you won't help. Andy Burnham, the time's up, the buck's stopping somewhere, and it's stopping with you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Hoban.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Having read this, the motion, and listened to Councillor Al-Hamdani, or Al-Hamdini, whichever one stood up, I think both him and Councillor Kenyon are very right. We've got a mayor here that said, "Not my fault, Gov," when the police service went into special measures, and now all of a sudden it is his fault and it's coming out. I don't think we can have any kind of confidence in a mayor that doesn't really have a mandate, because if I remember rightly, Greater Manchester voted against having a mayor quite a few years ago, and we ended up with this, well, I won't say. But yes, we will be backing the motion, because I find it hard to put any confidence in the mayor or his deputy with anything that they do, never mind the police.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Cheers, Madam Mayor, thank you. Madam Mayor, I'm against the motion for several reasons. One of them is this. Madam Mayor, I get everybody. I really do honestly get the fact that when Greater Manchester had that inspection by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Fire Services and Police Service, they got the biggest kick in they ever had, and they deserved it. I've said it to the Mayor, I've said it to the Chief Constable, I've said it to the Deputy Mayor, I've said it to the Police, Fire and Crime Panel, and it's documented, and I've said it, and I've said it. And I also said this to them: if you don't get this sorted, I'm off. So to Andy and to Bev, if you don't get it sorted, I'm going to come looking for you. And I've said it to the Chief Constable, because I'm not having it. It's out of order, what I'm saying, out of order. However, they're just special measures. And I didn't think, I thought I'd only have a minute here, Madam Mayor, so I've just got some things I wanted to say to you.
1
so
minute.
now there's...
1 minute you've got. So
Oh, God, one.
You're down to 43 seconds now.
How long have I got?
You're out of time.
Right. Madam Mayor, very, very quick.
10 seconds.
Madam Mayor, very quickly. Sam Aldana was at the meeting and me and Amanda was at, and he had the chance to ask the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, the Chief Constable, all what's in this motion. And when he was there, he didn't say anything.
You're out of time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fastest minute I've ever had that, innit?
Does Councillor Al-Hamdani wish to reply?
Very quickly, Madam Mayor. This force failed victims of domestic abuse under Andy Burnham's watch. Look me in the eye and tell me that's good enough. They failed to provide information repeatedly to the investigation. Look me in the eye and tell me that's good enough. They failed to know what's going on under their watch. They just don't have the information. That's his priorities. He's responsible for that. Please support the motion.
Thank you. Does Council agree with the motion? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The motion's lost. I go to motion 2 and I call on Councillor Quigg to move and Councillor Arnott to second. And again, we do have an amendment on this one. Councillor Quigg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What we've seen in Oldham is the complete handing over of power and no accountability to the Mayor of Greater Manchester, who faces little no scrutiny on what his officers are doing. It's why we've ended up with the Places for Everyone plan, and unlike Stockport, who had the balls to say no to May and Burnham, this borough's residents have spent years and are still spending time and money fighting for their green belt. What makes matters worse is the lack of forward planning about infrastructure, whether road, rail or GP surgeries. They are seemingly an afterthought in the grand plans of Mayor Burnham and council leaders in Greater Manchester. It is a staggering fact that Oldham only has one railway station in Greenfield, compared to the 5 of neighbouring Rochdale. By ripping out our rail infrastructure, the borough has failed to exploit the key connector between West Yorkshire and Greater Manchester, with Oldham being bypassed altogether. The lack of local knowledge and input shows the glaring hole in the way things are done in Greater Manchester, which is why this motion calls for real powers, real budgets and real ownership of decisions, and that they are devolved to the districts that make up this borough. Places like Royton, who are net contributors to the council coffers, and they are most certainly do not get back what they have put in. And taxpayers can see that that money they keep paying in council tax is going only one way, and that's to this council, and it gets wasted. It gets wasted on projects like Spindles, which we do not know how much money is going to be spent on. We keep telling we don't know what the figure will be. And then we get told we've got this £60 million black hole from Greater Manchester due to CAS. I mean, £60 million is obviously chump change to Mayor Burnham. So finally, Madam Mayor, when it comes to infrastructure and projects such as that, forward planning is key. And unfortunately, the cart always seems to come before the horse. And in Oldham, we are suffering for it. However, there is one subject that I will touch on that is set out in the motion, and that is immigration. Something the Labour administration conveniently strips out when it comes to its amendment, and a subject that the Labour Party is all too keen to avoid when it comes to real scrutiny. In fact, we don't know what their policy would be on it, but we can guess from their last time in power that the open door to the world would resume as normal. The number of people coming here boils down to supply and demand, and that is what it boils down to. If you have more people coming here than we have a supply and of services, and we have a finite of resources, don't forget, and Labour's sudden conversion to market economics is rather novel, given that they seem to be able to say which blank cheque they can write, but they don't seem to say how they're going to pay for it. Now, we've seen with Liz Truss, and how her budget fell by the wayside due to the bond markets and the forex exchanges. Equally, your government, if it was to ever get into power, would face those same pressures, and that would mean that housing, immigration and the control and supply of demand of services and other key infrastructure would come under scrutiny. So it's no good saying that we need a Labour government. Well, we don't need a Labour government because it's the last thing this country needs, because it'll end up being bankrupt like it was last time you were in power. Too often, the situation about immigration is thrown under the carpet, hidden, forgotten and gone away. And the Home Secretary is quite right when she said that on our southern border with France, there is an invasion. She is quite right. She is putting plain English into action. That is what the public out there think. That is what the people of this town think. And it's no good saying to the people of Oldham, when you've got 7,000 on the waiting list, you can't have an home because somebody who's come on a boat has come in and took that home away from you. Completely unfair, completely out of order. And it's about time people woke up and understood that supply and demand is key. Services are finite, and that this country only has a small pot, and it has a pot of money which it can only spend on key services. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to second this motion and to support all that Councillor Quigg has said. I would also like to thank him for forming a detailed, well thought out, grown-up motion that addresses fundamental, complex issues such as house building, transport links and the regeneration of our town and borough. Our residents want to see us striving to create and support stable and cohesive communities where they see a future and opportunity with good quality housing, sufficient and efficient local services and a strong, reliable transport links. They do not want to see us simply rolling out the same old mantra of what we can't do and why we can't do it. There is no doubt there's a requirement for new homes, not just in Oldham, but in Greater Manchester and across the UK. Andy Burnham's disastrous GMSF plan threatened greenbelt land across this borough, including Hanging Chadder and Thornham in Royton. As with the equally calamitous clean air zone, Oldham blindly followed Mayor Burnham's master plan for Greater Manchester like a nodding dog, championing the plan even at the expense of the green spaces that will be lost forever. The Places for Everyone plan that replaced GMSF is at least in some ways better. However, hard data shows that the projections appear to be way off the mark. The mechanisms exist to adjust targets to reflect changing circumstances and trends, as the motion suggests. The Council are urged to pursue this option and look again at the requirement for new building based on the 2021 census and apply for a deviation from the standard methodology based on evidence that is correct at the time. The Conservatives do not seek to hinder the progress of building new homes. In fact, the government have taken huge steps to increase the number of new, good quality and affordable homes being built right across the UK, and the aspiration of home ownership sits at the very heart of Conservative philosophy and values. New housing will be welcomed by residents when they are convinced that it's the right houses, in the right numbers, in the right places. God, it's 4 minutes, Vince, a minute. New house building is only one facet of the redevelopment picture, and understandably residents in Royton and other similar areas will look to the vast amounts of taxpayers' money that is being directed into the town centre redevelopment and regeneration projects, and will be quite rightly concerned as to whether they are getting their fair share and a good deal. Often, given that these areas are net contributors to the borough's economy, their unease at seeing tens of millions of pounds being freely spent in the town centre, while they see local services failing to grow sufficiently to support new housing or being eroded, is understandable. The Council is quick to criticise the government's levelling up plans, but it should look to itself and ensure that those areas outside of the town centre receive the appropriate level of support and investment. Real growth and stability rely heavily on extensive and reliable transport links, especially to neighbouring towns and cities. My office is in Haywood, only a couple of miles from Rochdale, a town that has a similar history, demographic and challenges as Oldham. However, Rochdale retained 5 of its railway stations with the introduction of Metrolink, while Oldham now has only Greenfield as an officially operating station. To attain and support real growth, Oldham needs to look to its borders and not only to Manchester. We would urge not only this council, but also our MPs to engage with Pennine towns, both in Lancashire and West Yorkshire, to work collaboratively and bilaterally to improve and increase transport links. Madam Mayor, nothing that I have said or suggested is easy. I recognise that. These are challenges for the long term and require hard work, imagination and focus on the bigger picture. This motion outlines our ideas to at least make a very small start on this journey. I support it and would urge the Council to do so. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I've had notice that Councillor Hume wishes to alter his motion as circulated. Councillor Hume.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Beat me to it. I call on Councillor Hume to move and Councillor Goodwin to second an amendment.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Oh, that's all. Cheers. Thanks, Steve. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I would just start by saying that on the subject of supply and demand and on immigration, that immigrants to this country are net contributors by billions of pounds to this country, and they also enrich our cultural life. And to scapegoat immigrants, some of the most vulnerable people as well, refugees and asylum seekers, for the housing crisis caused by the lack of supply is just simply wrong. And asylum seekers are not able to apply for social housing, so they are not taking social houses or houses from anyone. So I think that's just wrong. And on the subject, and broadly on the amendment itself, it just seeks to reflect the reality of housing and transport in the borough. On the issue of housing targets, I fully recognise, and we fully recognise, that the 2014 target is out of date and does not reflect reality. That is why the Council, the GM Mayor and the Members of Parliament have all demanded that the government change their target to a more up-to-date and accurate number that reflects the reality of Oldham Borough. But these have just fallen on deaf ears with the government. These local targets are driven by the national government seeking to meet the £300,000 homes pledge without upsetting their backbenchers. And Michael Gove this week recommitted to that target, and the government is clear they will, and they have already, removed planning powers from those...
Sorry, you're out of time.
I can't see the light properly,
You're out
sorry.
of time. Councillor Goodwin to second, please. You've got 1 minute just to remind you.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Just for clarification, the council agreed the alteration and that was signified without discussion. Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Mustat.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I haven't actually prepared anything, but just listening to...
You've got 1 minute.
Councillor Quigg, it's absolutely... Well, it's not shocking, to be honest. I'm kind of used to it now. But the fact that you've got Conservative MPs criticising their own government, you've got Red Wall MPs thinking of crossing the floor over to Labour because of the devastation caused by their own government. And then we have local Conservative councillors here defending Liz Truss. Unless I'm mistaken, I'm pretty sure he just defended Liz Truss. Food banks, the first food bank arrived in Oldham in 2012, following Conservative government in 2010. This is not an accident. NHS at breaking point, again, not an accident. Liz Truss crashing the economy with Kwasi Kwarteng, not an accident. That's not pressure from the markets. That's a shocking decision from a government, ideologically driven, not having a clue about what it's doing. And that's why we're at where we're at. Thank you.
Councillor Quigg, you wish to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Clearly a lot of hot winds coming out of the Labour Party tonight, so we'll be able to heat this chamber a bit faster. Madam Mayor, the markets, the bond markets, which you suddenly converted to and realised exist after nearly a decade of saying they don't, is a rather novel concept. The bond markets tell governments when they basically are getting it wrong and saying you need to get something right. That's whether you like it or not. And to say that immigration has not had an impact on supply and demand is delusional. Because if you have not got enough houses, given the pressures we've already got on services, where are you going to house all these new people? Where? Because you're the ones who control this council, you're the ones who sit in planning meetings and let them push through. Your open door policy after 1997 devastated this country and it devastated the impact on local services. And this government is trying its best to pick up that time and put things right. And whether you like it or not, you wanted to stay in the European Union with its open borders and its open crimes that's allowed gangs to let people cross the channel. It's completely out of order. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillors Moores, Hoban and Bashford, I have seen that you've indicated to speak. However, we've actually run out of time. We've run out of time. Councillor Hume, do you wish to reply?
Briefly, Madam Mayor, just to finish my point that the government will remove planning powers if these targets are not met. We need funding from, and we do need funding from central government to unlock our brownfield sites. But even if we build on every single brownfield site in Oldham, there's still not enough to meet the government's target. And I would also just say that that under the government we have seen this vast increase in small boats crossing the channel. They have not got a grip of that at all. Thank you.
We'll agree the amendment. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The amendment's carried. Does any member wish to speak on the motion as amended?
I think we've run out of time, haven't we, Madam Mayor?
Yes, we run out of time here. Does Councillor Quigg wish to reply?
No, Madam Mayor.
Does Council agree the motion as amended? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The motion is carried as amended. Motion 3, accounts on Councillor Ray to move and Councillor Hindle to second the motion. Councillor Ray.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. With an ever-growing number of HMOs popping up across the borough, all councillors must be aware of the increased frustration caused to neighbouring residents and the place they live. We are aware of the extra congestion these properties cause that good
essential family homes are being removed from the current market. Currently in Failsworth, we have an historic area being swamped with such developments, and the character and appeal to this historic place is being lost on a rapid scale. It can only be seen as a positive thing that we have residents who look upon the community favourably and want certain standards to be upheld where they live. They do, after all, pay a high premium with their council tax for the pleasure of living in this borough. It's to the detriment of local residents that this adverse impact of the HMOs saturating areas, causing doctors, dentists and other services to be strained. We are not increasing services to cope with the increased number of residents we are allowing to reside at a fraction of the cost to those who live in family homes. We want more for the area that we live. We want our residents to remain proud of where they live. Typically, HMO residents aren't taking part in community life, and we want to encourage to build on existing communities and see that the next generation grow where their parents intended them to. The issue of the increasing amount of HMOs isn't going away anytime soon. I'm sure this subject lands in your inbox as frequent as it does in ours, and the Failsworth Independent Party feel it's time that the Council finally listen to our constituents' genuine concerns on this. If the leader wants to preserve the heritage of Oldham, as she just referred to in her annual statement this evening, we'd appreciate it if the historic Failsworth Pole area not being allowed to be transformed into Bedsit Central.
Thank you. Councillor Hindle to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In seconding this motion, I am aware of the Labour administration's amendment, which is a political point-scoring exercise against the Tory party. Whilst the original Failsworth independent motion is targeting local issues directly, which is a real job of the Borough Council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. There's an amendment on this one, and I call on Councillor Kay Pythian to move and Councillor Dean to second. Councillor Pythian.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My proposed amendment clears up a few factual points and reinforces that the Government need to lower the threshold for an Article 4 directive. Under the instruction of the Leader and myself, officers at the Council have already been looking into this issue and will continue to do so. I'd also like to praise the work of our former colleague and your consort, Madam Mayor, Pete Davis, for the work he put into this issue in Failsworth. The truth of the matter is that for some Oldhamers, a HMO is the only affordable option they have, that bad landlords are more to blame than tenants, and that while HMOs can bring increased issues to communities, they don't always. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Dean to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that we need to take a balanced view on this, because HMOs do provide a lot of accommodation for people in real need. And in actual fact, the actual HMOs consist in property terms of 0.3% of the total properties in this borough. And in actual fact, there's only 68 HMOs over the smaller number. There's 331 registered HMOs, but there's only 68 above the registered, the number that they require planning permission. So, and those are equally spread throughout the borough. And I do think that we need to do something, and I think we need to investigate which is actually happening through the local plan. So we hope that we'll reach a reasonable way forward, but obviously the government really have to make some changes to give local councils some authority to actually stop what's actually happening.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Ray, do you wish to reply? Oh, sorry. Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Holbin, you've got 1 minute. Councillor Bashford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Dean. I know he's got quite a bit of knowledge about HMOs with being the planning chair, but the issue that we've got in areas like Failsworth, where we represent, in the historic area that we're fighting for, of 141 houses, we've got at least 10 of them now that are HMOs. That's a cluster. That's what we want to stop. The clusters like this ruining local areas and increasingly making that area outside of the community. It's not a community-led HMO borough. We don't want bedsit land, especially in an historical area that we've got. So while the figures may be small on the whole, Councillor Dean, we've got clusters now popping up in areas that shouldn't be allowed to take over that percentage of houses.
Thank you. Councillor Bashford.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. You might be interested in know, Councillor Orbin, a few years ago I actually turned one of these HMOs down in the Failsworth Conservation Area because we felt it was inappropriate at the time. There wasn't that many there at the time, but it went to appeal. We lost the appeal. The government inspector granted it. I've got a lot of experience with this, fighting HMOs. I'm absolutely no fan. I agree with what Councillor Dean says. In some cases, they're okay. But what you were talking about, the cluster there is a concern there, and that's the thing that worries me, that will spring up everywhere. However, I always say, if you want to win a war, you need to know your enemy. And in this case, the enemy is not the council. The enemy is the body that sets the rules for the Section 4. And by telling people this Section 4 exists and the council can bring it in, we're just going to disappoint people and not achieve what we need to do. What we need to do is, like we say in our amendment, we need the government to lower that threshold for the Section 4 so we can deal with situations like that in a conservation area. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ray, do you wish to reply?
Yes, please. That's exactly what we're asking the government to do in this motion. We want them to tackle this.
Councillor Pythian, do you wish to reply?
No reply, Madam Mayor.
Yeah. Does Council agree with the amendment? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The amendment is carried. There's another amendment on this one, and I call on Councillor Gloucester to move and Councillor Al-Hamdani to second an amendment. Councillor Gloucester.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. It's quite strange that we've got a motion here that basically everybody sort of seems to recognise the problem. Everybody seems to sort of agree with. But it's not a new problem. And the reason why it's not a new problem is because it's been going on for a few years now, and it is something that we as a political group raised over 12 months ago, where we got pretty much the same stock answer. Since that time, there's other developments been taking place, particularly in Failsworth. I know Peter Davis was absolutely apoplectic in relation to HMOs. The last time Norman Briggs spoke in this council, I think it related to HMOs. And quite clearly, there is getting to be a cluster issue in Failsworth, and there's starting to be a cluster issue in Failsworth, in Shaw. So I ask you to support our amendment. Thanks.
Councillor Al-Hamdani to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very quickly, I think there's a really important point that's been missed on this. HMOs, the problem isn't just about planning, and I think significantly, licensing is much more of an issue because it's not the building that causes the problems, it's the behaviour that goes along with it. That's a licensing issue, that's not a planning issue, and that's why we've included something on licensing. I had written a whole motion about it, but we only got this bit in because we can only do one at a time. Please support getting something in on licensing.
Any member wish to speak on the amendment? No, there's no time anyway. Councillor A, do you wish to reply?
No, thank you.
Does Councillor Gloucester wish to reply?
No, thank you.
Does Council agree the amendment? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? That amendment is lost. Does any member wish to speak on the motion as amended? Does Councillor Ray wish to reply?
No, thank you.
We now go to the vote. Does Council agree the motion? Those in favour, as amended. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The motion is carried as amended. We now go to item 13 on actions from the Council. I call on Councillor Chadderton to move and Councillor Sykes to second the report.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does Councillor Kenyon? Yeah, go on. Got the three of you? Yeah, no. Go on then, Councillor Kenyon.
It's an item that doesn't actually appear on there, but it was a motion that we passed in July called Making Fairer Decisions. There's no update on that. Basically, that called for a change in the equality impact assessment to include a measure on local spending and on children's safety. And that put a 3-month deadline for the Council to act, and I don't see an update on that, so I'd appreciate some info on that. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if you allow me, I'll just take the opportunity to update. Is that okay with Council? Just to confirm that we acknowledge that motion was passed by Council. We've started to act towards implementation. We've afforded a wider workshop to look at the broader implications, a drop-in workshop that many members did come to. I think, if I'm right in thinking that we've now virtually finalised, we've extended the equality impact assessment. It'll be a really invaluable tool, and we're looking to pilot that for all decisions that the Council's taking through Cabinet from the next cycle, fully operational from January. But we did afford an option, a drop-in workshop for members, and I'll tomorrow make sure that we email all members with an update on that. But it's made excellent progress. The Health and Wellbeing Board have also had some input to this to expand it for broader inequalities. So we're very excited about bringing this forward. It fully incorporates the resolution. Apologies, Madam Mayor, if we haven't kept members fully informed. We'll do an update tomorrow.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's actually two questions I've got on two separate items. Do you want to do them together or come back to me? Okie doke. Madam Mayor, firstly, please excuse the pun. The Liberal Democrats have made noise in the chamber, just as other members have, regarding the antisocial use of fireworks. As Bonfire Night approaches very quickly, and Indians in Oldham and across the world have recently celebrated Diwali, there is a time and a place for fireworks. Since members across all parties have raised the issue in the past, perhaps now would be a good opportunity for the leader or cabinet member to give an update and say what action has been taken against the empty heads who will let fireworks off at any time of the day or night. What can the public do to help tackle the issue? And if it's a problem that we're going to struggle to solve, let's just be honest and say so. But perhaps we could explore the example of what I understand happens in Northern Ireland by needing a licence to purchase fireworks. Second question.
So,
second question.
Second question. Madam Mayor, Councillor Chadderton, it saddens me to raise this in chamber. It's with reference to actions on the 7th of September, pages 70 to 71, with reference to the CSE steering group. Now seems like as good a time as any to address the elephant in the room. An Oldham councillor has been accused of rape, and I'm a believer in innocent until proven guilty. That said, the public would be right to ask why this councillor has not been suspended from their duties as a neutral act. Liberal Democrats have already issued a statement to say this person is not a member of our group. Would the council leader please provide reassurances that to the members of the public are not at risk? Appropriate safeguarding measures have been put in place and risk assessments have been carried out. And can the leader confirm, whilst against maintaining the important right of innocence before proven guilt, that the CSE steering group will not comprise of members that have been accused of rape? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Chadderton.
So first off, for a point of clarity, I suppose, and I suppose it's part of legal clarity or from constitutional services, in reference to the fireworks, that wasn't an action from the council. Are we now just allowed to ask questions on anything mildly relating to something as an action at a council?
I'll refer to the through chair. This was just an update that indicated that on the 9th of September there was an administration motion. So therefore, it was just an update on the action that had been taken further to that council resolution.
Okay, so I mean, I don't think it's really appropriate for me to answer the fireworks stuff at the moment, because otherwise we're going to get into a habit of that wasn't what was agreed at council, so I don't believe that is an action for the council. I'm quite happy to send Councillor Murphy work that ourselves and GMP are doing in relation to fireworks. That's fine. Now, in relation to the councillor that has been arrested, but as you say, not charged for rape, and the presumption is always innocent until proven guilty. I mean, it's a very difficult thing, isn't it, this? And you've got to be careful about jigsaw identification as well, because I know some parties have come out and said it's not us and it's not us and blah, blah, blah. But you've also got to be conscious of, you know, there is potentially a victim, somebody who has gone to the police and accused the person of a very serious crime, and that's no doubt a traumatic experience, having to go to the police and report that crime. So we should always think about the potential for that victim and any further distress as well. Now, we are not employees of the authority, because if the reality is, if this wasn't an employee of the authority, they would have been suspended in line with what is the council protocol. And in the same way, the vast majority of our other organisations would take that action. But as councillors, we are not employed by our authority, so the responsibility falls back onto the political party. Now, I think in regards to safeguarding and stuff, Harry might want to update about things that have been put in place. I do think maybe people should reflect about whether it is appropriate for that member, if they are attending council or they are attending meetings, whether that is appropriate. But there's nothing I can do as leader, and there's nothing Harry can do in relation to some of that, because we are not employees of the council. But we are conscious about a potential safeguarding issue. And I'm sorry about the way that has all been worded, but you've got to be really careful, haven't you, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. Call on Councillor Al-Hamdani.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies, it's not something that is included because it's not been put in. I raised it at the last council meeting about the white ribbon motion that was put forward by Labour. It's now 3 years. I can see Councillor Goodwin nodding. I'm going to recognise him as an ambassador for white ribbon because I know that he is. It's really important that this goes ahead. It was supposed to take 3 years, and we've hit the 3 years. It's really not good enough. It's White Ribbon Day this month. I want to see what this council is doing to stand up against domestic abuse, to stand up against violence for women. I really want to be supportive. It's not there, and I'm quite angry that it's not there.
Councillor Chedderton.
Part of it's a constitutional services issue. If it's not there, if it was meant to be an action for the council, so I can't really report on that. However, I know Councillor Al-Hamdani has emailed me in the past week. I did expect it to go forward as an action to the council, but it hasn't. But what I have asked for is a full update to be given to Councillor Al-Hamdani and to all councillors as well. And I also noted your request that we light up the Civic Tower, so that will be done, Councillor Al-Hamdani. Thank you.
Thank you. Does Council agree the recommendations as detailed within the report? Agree. Thank you. Go on to item 14, the appointment of Independent Chair Audit Committee. I call on Councillor Chadderton to move and Councillor Sheldon to second the report.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does Council agree the recommendations as detailed within the report? Great. That concludes the business of this evening, and I thank you all for your cooperation. Thank you.